The air was heavy with the scent of blooming flowers, a delicate yet intoxicating aroma that wrapped itself around everything it touched. It was as though the earth itself had exhaled in relief after a long, cold silence. In the heart of ancient Rome, under a sky painted with streaks of gold and crimson, a whisper spread among the people: Flora has awakened. Her name carried the weight of life itself. To speak it was to feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, the soft caress of petals in the wind, and the pulse of spring coursing through the veins of a world reborn. Flora was not just a goddess, she was a force. She was the laughter of children running through meadows, the shy smile of a bud unfurling, and the endless promise that life would always return. In those early mornings, when the frost clung stubbornly to the ground and the earth seemed unwilling to stir, the Romans prayed to her. They whispered their hopes for renewal, for bounty, for beauty. To them, Flora wasn't an abstract deity distant from mortal concerns. She was the color on a gray canvas, the song in a silent world. Her presence meant that everything forgotten and buried by winter would find its voice again. Flora's story was older than the stones of Rome, older than the myths that tried to contain her. She had been there in every field of wheat, every garden filled with wildflowers, every orchard bursting with fruit. The Romans saw her in the explosion of color that arrived each spring, a season so vivid it felt like the earth itself had painted a masterpiece overnight. She wasn't born from chaos like some gods, nor was she forged in war. Flora was born of life itself, tender and fierce, quiet and unstoppable. Her name echoed through the streets during the festival of Floralia, where the boundaries between the sacred and the mortal seemed to blur. The celebrations were wild and joyful, as if the entire city had been set aflame with her essence. Flowers rained down from balconies, dancers moved as if carried by unseen winds, and laughter spilled like wine through the cobblestone streets. She was there in every petal that fell, and every cheer that rose, watching, smiling, alive. But Flora wasn't all sweetness and light. Beneath the softness of her flowers lay a truth that the Romans understood too well. Life was beautiful, yes, but it was also fragile. A bloom could be crushed underfoot, a crop could fail, a life could end. Flora reminded them of this balance. She was not just the goddess of flowers, but of growth, decay, and everything in between. Her power lay in the understanding that beauty and loss were intertwined, that one could not exist without the other. Her myths spoke of moments when even the gods turned to her for help. Juno, proud and impenetrable, had once come to Flora in desperation. The queen of the gods, unable to bear a child without a man's touch, sought Flora's aid. The goddess of flowers, with her gentle hands and unwavering power, offered Juno a single flower. "This will give you what you seek," she said simply. And it did. Mars, the god of war, was born from that quiet act of creation. Flora's touch had shifted the fates of gods and mortals alike, but she never boasted of her strength. She simply was. Yet, for all her connection to life, there were moments when her silence spoke louder than her presence. During times of drought, when fields turned to dust and flowers withered before their time, the absence of Flora was a weight the people carried with them. It wasn't anger they felt, but longing, a desperate yearning for the return of her touch. They left offerings at her temples, tiny bouquets of wildflowers, and whispered promises of devotion. Some said that if you listened closely in the stillness of a spring morning, you could hear her voice in the rustle of leaves or the soft hum of bees. Others claimed to see her in their dreams, a figure cloaked in a gown of blossoms, her hair a cascade of vines. She would walk among fields and gardens, her steps bringing life to the barren earth. They awoke with the scent of flowers in their nostrils, their hearts full of a warmth they couldn't explain. The stories of Flora wove themselves into the very fabric of life. Farmers thanked her with every harvest, lovers saw her blessing in the roses they exchanged. Even in the heart of the city, where stone and mortar seemed to choke the natural world, Flora found a way. Her flowers grew in the cracks of walls, in the courtyards of bustling homes, and in the garlands that adorned statues and temples. She was inescapable, undeniable, eternal. As the days lengthened and the sun grew warmer, the anticipation built. It was in the way the earth softened beneath the first spring rains, and the tiny shoots that pushed defiantly through the soil. It was in the laughter of children who felt her presence before they even knew her name. Flora's return wasn't a moment, it was a crescendo, a symphony of life that burst forth in colors too bright for mortal eyes. The Romans watched, waited, hoped. They knew Flora's gift wasn't just the flowers themselves, but the reminder that life was a cycle, an endless loop of endings and beginnings. And even in their darkest winters, when the earth seemed barren and hope felt like a distant memory, Flora's promise lingered: spring would come. Life would bloom again. Long before the marble temples and grand festivals, before her name became synonymous with the first blush of spring, Flora's beginnings were whispered in the wind, in the gentle stirrings of the earth as it awoke after slumber. Hers was not a story carved into the stone of grand myths, but one rooted in the humblest expressions of life: wildflowers blooming in the cracks of forgotten roads, a meadow bursting with untamed colors after a storm. They said she was born not of divine parents, but of the earth itself, a being shaped by the cycles of nature. She emerged during the world's earliest dawns, when the earth was still raw and unyielding. The first flowers sprang forth in her wake, their petals delicate and vibrant, defying the rugged wilderness that surrounded them. Her presence softened the harsh edges of creation, her footsteps coaxing life from barren soil. In the early days, when the gods themselves were still young, Flora wandered the untamed world. She was not yet a goddess but a spirit, a whisper of vitality that moved where she was needed most. Mortals did not know her name, but they felt her. When their crops grew abundant and their orchards bore fruit, they thanked the invisible force that seemed to bless their lands. When children wove garlands of daisies and marigolds, they were unknowingly paying homage to the one who had brought those blooms to life. Flora's transformation into a goddess was not a moment of triumph, but a quiet acknowledgement of her role in the grand tapestry of existence. The gods took notice of her. Jupiter, the king of the heavens, saw her not as a rival but as an essential force, a balance to the storms of Neptune, the fires of Vulcan, and the wars of Mars. She was the pause between the chaos, the breath between the seasons. It was he who gave her dominion over flowers and spring, a realm so delicate yet so powerful that even the gods tread lightly in her presence. But Flora's path was not without pain. Her connection to life meant she also bore witness to loss. Every flower that wilted, every tree that fell, every field reduced to ash, she felt them all as wounds upon her being. There was a time when mortals, in their ignorance, razed entire forests to build their cities, leaving the earth bare and broken. Flora wept then, her tears watering the parched ground, giving it the strength to heal. It was said that from her sorrow grew the violets, their petals a soft, mournful purple. Though she was gentle, Flora was not powerless. In one tale, a mortal king sought to harness her gifts for his own greed. He ordered his servants to capture the goddess, thinking her beauty and power could be confined. They came to her meadow with nets and chains, but Flora did not resist. She allowed them to take her, silent and calm, her presence a quiet storm. The moment they set foot in the king's palace, the flowers they carried wilted, their vibrant colors turning to ash. The air grew heavy, suffocating, as if the very essence of life had been drained from the world. The king fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness, and Flora, ever compassionate, simply turned and walked away. Her kindness was not weakness, it was a reminder of her strength. Flora did not need armies or thunderbolts to command respect. Her power lay in creation, in renewal. She could bring a barren land to life with a single touch, but she could also withhold her gifts, leaving a landscape to wither under the sun. Over time, the mortals began to honor her with the reverence she deserved. They built her temples, modest at first, adorned not with gold but with the simple beauty of flowers. Priests and priestesses tended to her shrines, scattering petals and offering wreaths as symbols of gratitude. The festival of Floralia was born from their devotion, a celebration that turned entire cities into gardens of color and fragrance. But Flora's true temple was the natural world. She did not linger in the grand halls of the gods, but roamed freely through forests, fields, and gardens. Her presence was felt in every petal that unfurled, and every blade of grass that swayed in the breeze. She was there when a seed split open in the dark, silent earth, reaching upward toward the light. Her origins were simple, yet they carried the weight of existence. Flora was not a goddess of grand battles or fiery passions. She was a goddess of quiet miracles, the ones that often went unnoticed but were no less profound. She was there in the first breath of a newborn calf, in the burst of green after a spring rain, in the fragile beauty of a single flower growing in a forgotten corner of the world. Even as the years passed and the world changed, Flora remained. She was a constant, a gentle reminder that no matter how harsh the winter, no matter how deep the darkness, life would always find a way to return. And in that promise, she became not just a goddess but a symbol of hope, a living embodiment of the earth's resilience. And so, as the seasons turned and the first buds of spring began to peek through the frost, the mortals knew Flora had not forgotten them. She never would. The soft rustle of petals in the morning breeze carried an ancient story, one that intertwined two names whispered by the winds of antiquity: Flora, the Roman goddess of flowers, and Chloris, her Greek counterpart. Though the world saw them as kindred spirits, their differences were as vivid as the blooms they nurtured. Where Flora moved with warmth and life, Chloris was shrouded in an air of mystery, her presence marked by a quiet, melancholic beauty. Flora, vibrant and generous, was the pulse of springtime rebirth. Every flower she touched seemed to dance in celebration of life, spreading joy with every bloom. She embodied vitality, a goddess whose laughter echoed through gardens and meadows. Mortals adored her with a fervor born from gratitude, as she filled their lives with color and abundance. To Flora, flowers were more than mere decoration. They were a language, a way to connect the world in the silent beauty of nature. Chloris, however, was different. Her mythology wove a tale of transformation, a poignant reminder of love and loss. She was said to have been a nymph once, wandering the wilds of Greece with a heart unburdened by divine responsibility. Then came the west wind, Zephyrus, sweeping through the hills with a force that could not be denied. He claimed her, a union that was as passionate as it was forceful. From that union, Chloris became a goddess, a reluctant queen of flowers. While Flora basked in the adoration of mortals, Chloris bore the weight of her origin story. Her gardens were beautiful but carried a hint of sorrow, as though every petal bore the memory of her transformation. The Greeks loved her in their way, offering wreaths of wildflowers and whispering her name as they wandered through fields of poppies and daisies. Yet, their devotion was tinged with a kind of reverence that kept her distant, almost unreachable. When the stories of these two goddesses crossed paths, comparisons were inevitable. Flora's legends painted her as a goddess who reveled in her power, a being of joy and celebration. Her festivals were alive with laughter, the streets overflowing with petals in every color imaginable. Floralia, her grand celebration, was not merely an offering, it was a living, breathing testament to her place in the hearts of the people. Chloris had no such festival. Her presence was quieter, her gifts understated. She did not walk among mortals or receive their cheers. Instead, she was a whisper in the wind, a fleeting figure in the corner of one's eye, gone before her beauty could be fully grasped. Despite these contrasts, Flora and Chloris were not adversaries. They existed in parallel, their worlds touching but never colliding. Each goddess held a piece of the flower's soul: Flora, the exuberance of its bloom, and Chloris, the whisper of its origin. There was a story told in Rome, passed from mother to child, of a chance meeting between the two goddesses. It was said to have taken place in a meadow that stretched endlessly, its grass soft as silk and its flowers brighter than any tapestry. Flora arrived first, her steps painting the ground with daisies and marigolds. She moved with confidence, her presence undeniable, her touch leaving trails of vibrant life. Chloris appeared as a breeze, barely stirring the petals, her form emerging slowly, as if reluctant to be seen. She moved among the flowers like a shadow, her fingers brushing against their petals. For a moment, the meadow was still, as though the earth itself held its breath, watching these two forces of nature meet. They did not speak, or so the story goes, for there was no need. In their silence, they acknowledged one another, not as rivals but as reflections of a shared purpose. Flora extended her hand, and in it rested a rose of unparalleled beauty, its petals kissed by the sun. Chloris took the rose, her touch transforming it into something gentler, its colors softening to pastel hues. The mortals who told this story often argued over its meaning. Some said it was a tale of unity, a reminder that even the most different of beings could find common ground. Others believed it was a lesson in contrast, an illustration of how two forces could coexist without overshadowing one another. Whatever the truth, the story lingered, much like the fragrance of a flower long after it has been plucked. Flora and Chloris, two goddesses of the same essence yet shaped by different worlds, remained etched in the hearts of those who loved the beauty of the earth. Their presence was felt in every garden, every field, every bloom that turned its face toward the sun. As the petals fell softly to the ground, the meadow seemed to exhale, its colors blending into the horizon. And somewhere in the distance, carried by the gentle rustle of leaves, a question lingered: what might happen when joy and sorrow, vibrance and melancholy, beauty and pain, existed side by side? The answer, perhaps, lay not in the story itself, but in the flowers that continue to bloom, resilient and unyielding, in every corner of the world. The language of flowers speaks in whispers, weaving stories and emotions into every petal and stem. For Flora, the Roman goddess of flowers and spring, this symbolism was not merely an art, it was the essence of her divine being. She moved through the world, her touch breathing life into blossoms that carried messages too profound for words. Each bloom she created was a letter in an eternal love song, a poem penned in the hues of nature. Imagine a field bursting with color, vivid reds, tender blues, and radiant yellows. These were not random bursts of beauty, they were Flora's deliberate creations, each chosen for the meaning it carried. The red rose, bold and passionate, became the symbol of love so deep it could conquer anything. The daisy, with its humble white petals, whispered of innocence and purity. The violet, shy and unassuming, held the weight of loyalty and modesty. Flora understood what mortals often overlooked, that flowers were more than adornments. They were bridges between the human and the divine, vessels of emotion that could convey what words could not. A single bloom left at a doorstep could speak volumes, an apology, a declaration, a silent promise. Flora's gift to humanity was not just beauty but a way to communicate the inexpressible. But the symbolism of flowers was not confined to love and joy. Flora's creations also bore the weight of grief and loss. The lilies that adorned graves whispered of purity restored, a life transcended. Marigolds, with their fiery hues, burned with remembrance, their petals holding the warmth of a spirit that had passed. Even the simplest wildflowers that grew unbidden in forgotten corners carried their quiet messages, reminders of resilience and hope. Flora's connection to flowers was not merely one of creation, it was one of empathy. She understood the depth of human emotion, the yearning for connection, and the need for solace. Her role as goddess was not to demand worship, but to offer comfort and meaning. In the rituals of planting, tending, and harvesting, mortals found her presence. Every garden became a sanctuary, every flowerbed a canvas on which to express their innermost selves. The symbolism of flowers extended beyond individual emotions to entire cultures and traditions. In Rome, the floral garlands woven for weddings carried blessings for fertility and harmony. At festivals, showers of blossoms celebrated unity and abundance. Each petal that fell to the ground was a promise, a fragment of Flora's covenant with humanity to nurture and sustain life. Yet, Flora's relationship with flowers was not without its challenges. She watched as mortals sometimes misunderstood her gifts, using them as tools of manipulation or vanity. The delicate balance of meaning could be twisted, turning symbols of love into weapons of deceit. But even in this, Flora did not despair. She saw the capacity for flowers to heal, to bridge divides, to mend what was broken. The beauty of Flora's work lay in its universality. Flowers spoke to all, regardless of status, age, or origin. A child plucking a dandelion and a ruler crowned with laurel were both participants in her silent dialogue. In their shared connection to her creations, they found common ground. Flora's flowers did not discriminate, they embraced all who sought their meaning. One of the most profound symbols Flora wove into her creations was the cycle of life. Blossoms, in their fleeting beauty, reminded mortals of the transience of existence. A flower that bloomed with vibrant energy only to wither and fall carried a message that resonated deeply: life is precious, and every moment must be cherished. Yet, in the seeds scattered by the wind, there was also a promise of renewal, a reminder that endings were never truly final. In her quiet way, Flora taught the world to see beyond the surface. A flower was not just a flower, it was a story waiting to be told. To place a bloom in someone's hand was to share a piece of that story, a fragment of meaning that connected hearts. And as petals unfurled in the warmth of the sun, so too did the human spirit, finding joy, solace, and purpose in the simple yet profound beauty of the natural world. The garden of meaning Flora cultivated grew endlessly, each flower a thread in the tapestry of life. Even now, her creations speak to us, their voices carried on the breeze. And in every bouquet, every wildflower, every solitary bloom, the goddess of flowers and spring lingers, her presence as eternal as the seeds that birth new life. The seasons shifted like an eternal dance, each step choreographed by the heavens, each note sung by nature itself. In this rhythm of change, Flora played her role not as a mere observer but as a conductor of life's most delicate transitions. She was not just the goddess of flowers, she was the quiet force that wove blooms into the fabric of the seasons, bridging the gaps between their cycles with colors, scents, and the whispers of growth. Spring was her domain, the season where her essence burned brightest. The air buzzed with the promise of life, and Flora's footsteps painted the ground with an explosion of petals. Trees that had stood bare through the winter now burst into blossom at her touch, their branches heavy with fragrant blooms. Fields that had lain fallow suddenly erupted with wildflowers, their faces tilted toward the returning sun. It was as though the world sighed in relief, shedding the cold weight of winter in favor of Flora's gentle embrace. But Flora's bond with the seasons was not limited to spring. Her presence lingered in summer, though more subtly. As the sun rose higher in the sky, her flowers stood tall, drinking deeply of its warmth. The daisies and sunflowers, bold and bright, carried her joy into the longer days. Flora understood that summer was a time of celebration and growth, and she allowed the world to revel in the abundance she had nurtured. Autumn brought a quieter kind of beauty, one that many overlooked but Flora cherished deeply. As the days shortened and the air grew crisp, her role shifted. The flowers of spring and summer faded, their vibrant colors giving way to the warm, earthy tones of fall. Flora's touch was softer now, a whisper of life amidst the changing leaves. The chrysanthemums bloomed defiantly against the cooling air, their resilience a testament to Flora's enduring presence. Even in decay, she found beauty, as fallen petals and scattered seeds promised new beginnings. Winter, the most solemn of the seasons, seemed at first to hold no place for Flora. Yet even in its darkness, her influence could be felt. Beneath the frost-covered earth, seeds lay dormant, cradled by the promise of spring. Flora moved silently through the barren landscapes, her touch unseen but deeply felt. The evergreens that dotted the landscape bore her mark, their needles a reminder that life persisted even in the harshest conditions. She worked in whispers, preparing the world for the return of light and warmth. The relationship between Flora and the seasons was not always harmonious. She watched as the world often struggled to understand the necessity of change, as mortals clung to the fleeting beauty of spring or mourned the arrival of autumn's chill. Flora knew, however, that each season had its purpose, its moment of grace. She sought to teach this to those who looked to her for guidance, using her flowers as metaphors for life's own cycles. There was an ancient tale that spoke of a year when the seasons faltered, each refusing to yield to the next. Spring lingered too long, choking the earth with unchecked growth. Summer burned hotter than ever, its intensity wilting Flora's beloved blooms. Autumn, reluctant to arrive, brought only weak whispers of change, and winter's icy breath seemed forgotten altogether. The balance was broken, and the world grew weary under the strain. Flora, it is said, called upon the seasons to meet in a grove where her flowers bloomed in every hue imaginable. She stood in the center, her presence commanding yet kind, and she spoke not with authority but with understanding. She reminded them of their shared purpose, the way their unique gifts worked together to sustain the earth. Spring's renewal, summer's vigor, autumn's preparation, and winter's rest, all were necessary, each incomplete without the others. As she spoke, the seasons began to understand, their discord melting like frost under the spring sun. They pledged to resume their dance, moving in harmony as Flora wove her flowers into their cycles once more. And so, the world returned to balance, its rhythm restored, its beauty renewed. Even now, Flora's hand can be seen in the gentle transitions from one season to the next. Her flowers are the heralds of change, blooming in the cracks where one cycle ends and another begins. Snowdrops peek through winter's frost, promising spring's arrival. Goldenrod and asters hold on to summer's warmth, easing the descent into autumn. Hollyberries shine bright against winter's chill, a reminder that life endures even in the darkest months. Flora did not fight the seasons, she flowed with them, embracing their changes as an artist embraces a shifting palette. Her flowers told the story of time, each bloom a chapter in the endless book of life. And though the seasons would always turn, Flora remained their constant companion, a quiet force ensuring that beauty and growth would never fade, no matter how cold the winds might blow. In the early days of Rome, before marble temples rose to the skies and grand ceremonies filled the streets, the gods were closer to the earth, their presence felt in the whispers of the wind and the rustling of leaves. Flora was one of these deities, her essence entwined with the humblest and most profound aspects of Roman life. She was not a distant, untouchable figure, but a goddess deeply rooted in the soil, her spirit blooming in every field and meadow. For the earliest Romans, Flora was not just the goddess of flowers and spring, she was life itself, thriving and vibrant. Her name was invoked in prayers whispered over seeds before they were sown, and thanks murmured as the first blossoms of the season appeared. To these people, Flora was not a luxury or an ornament but a necessity, a divine presence ensuring the cycle of growth and renewal that sustained their survival. In those days, the worship of Flora was simple, almost primal. There were no grand altars adorned with jewels, no towering statues carved from stone. Instead, offerings were left in fields and gardens, wildflowers, fruits, and grains placed on makeshift altars of earth and wood. These gifts were humble, yet they carried profound meaning, symbols of gratitude and trust in Flora's benevolence. Her festivals, too, were rooted in the natural world. The Floralia, though it would later become a more elaborate celebration, began as an intimate gathering of farmers and their families. They honored her with songs and dances performed in open fields, their movements echoing the rhythms of planting and harvest. Children wove garlands of flowers to place on their heads, their laughter ringing out like the first notes of spring. Flora's role in early Roman religion extended beyond agriculture and nature. She was also a symbol of fertility and abundance, embodying the vitality that pulsed through all living things. Women seeking to conceive often turned to Flora, leaving offerings of petals and fruit at her shrines, hoping to invoke her blessing. Her favor was sought not only for the fertility of the fields, but also for the continuance of family lines, the blossoming of life in every form. In this time, Flora was not yet overshadowed by the grandeur of later Roman gods. Her presence was personal, her touch seen and felt in every bloom that opened and every bud that promised new life. She was a goddess of the people, her spirit as accessible as the flowers that grew at their feet. Yet, Flora's worship was not without its mysteries. There were whispers of sacred groves hidden deep within the countryside, places where her presence was said to be strongest. In these groves, wildflowers grew in impossible abundance, their colors more vibrant, their scents more intoxicating. It was believed that stepping into one of these sacred spaces brought mortals closer to Flora's divine essence, allowing them to feel her life-giving energy as a tangible force. These groves were both revered and feared. Stories circulated of those who entered them without proper reverence, only to find themselves lost, their paths obscured by vines and petals. Others spoke of visions granted by Flora herself, glimpses of a world where flowers never withered, and the earth remained eternally in bloom. These tales, whether rooted in truth or imagination, deepened the sense of awe and respect surrounding Flora, reminding the Romans of her power and mystery. Even as Roman society grew more complex and urbanized, Flora's presence remained vital. She represented a connection to the natural world that the earliest Romans understood instinctively, a reminder of the cycles that governed their lives, the unseen forces that made the earth bloom and bear fruit. Her worship, simple yet profound, was a reflection of the Romans' deep-seated respect for the balance between humanity and nature. Flora's early role in Roman religion was not defined by hierarchy or grandeur, but by intimacy and necessity. She was the goddess who walked alongside mortals, her blessings as vital as the air they breathed and the soil they tilled. In honoring her, the Romans honored life itself, their offerings and prayers a testament to the sacred bond between the human and the divine. And as her flowers opened each spring, they carried the silent promise that Flora's presence would endure, as constant and eternal as the seasons. The air was alive with a joyful energy, vibrant and untamed, as if the world itself had donned a crown of blossoms. The Floralia, one of ancient Rome's most spirited and colorful festivals, was a celebration unlike any other. It was a time when the rigid structures of Roman life softened, replaced by revelry that honored Flora, the goddess of flowers and spring. For days, the city was transformed into a living tapestry of petals, laughter, and life, an ode to renewal and abundance. The origins of the Floralia are traced back to the early days of the Republic, around 240 BCE. The festival was first established following consultations with the Sibylline books, ancient texts that guided the Romans in matters of religion. At its heart, the Floralia was a response to a poor harvest, a plea for Flora's favor to ensure the fertility of the land and the prosperity of the people. From this practical beginning, the festival evolved into a celebration that embraced the sensual and the jubilant, a reflection of Flora's own essence. Each year, the Floralia began on April 28th and continued through the first days of May. The timing was significant, coinciding with the peak of spring when the earth was bursting with life and color. It was a season of blossoms and renewal, a perfect backdrop for honoring the goddess who presided over these natural wonders. The festival opened with theatrical performances that embodied the playful and exuberant spirit of Flora. Comedies were the preferred genre, with actors donning vibrant costumes and delivering bawdy, light-hearted plays that delighted the crowds. These performances often featured themes of love, mischief, and the unpredictable nature of the seasons, drawing laughter that echoed through the city streets. Beyond the theaters, the streets of Rome became the stage for an elaborate and immersive celebration. People adorned themselves with floral garlands, their heads crowned with vivid blossoms that seemed to mirror the joy in their hearts. Brightly colored clothing replaced the usual muted Roman attire, a bold display of life's vibrancy under Flora's watchful gaze. Processions filled the streets, led by priests and priestesses of Flora who carried offerings of flowers and grains. The scent of freshly picked blooms mingled with the earthy aroma of the fields, creating an intoxicating atmosphere that seemed to envelop the city. These processions often included dancers and musicians, their movements and melodies invoking the goddess's blessing on the land and its people. The Floralia was not confined to public spaces, it spilled into private homes and gardens, where families and friends gathered to share in the festivities. Tables were laden with fruits, honey, and bread, offerings to Flora that doubled as feasts for the revelers. It was a time of abundance, a reflection of the goddess's gifts and a reminder of the cycles that sustained life. One of the most striking elements of the Floralia was its unabashed embrace of freedom and joy. It was a festival where social hierarchies blurred, where slaves were given temporary liberties, and the boundaries of decorum were relaxed. This sense of liberation was intrinsic to Flora's nature, her flowers a symbol of life's fleeting beauty and the need to savor every moment. The games of the Floralia were another highlight, held in the Circus Maximus with great fanfare. These games included chariot races, athletic competitions, and even contests involving animals. In keeping with the festival's exuberant spirit, some events were infused with humor and playfulness, providing entertainment that captivated audiences of all ages. However, the Floralia was not without its critics. Some conservative Romans viewed the festival's indulgent nature as excessive, its freedoms as a threat to traditional values. Yet these voices were often drowned out by the overwhelming enthusiasm of the participants, who saw in the Floralia a celebration of life's vitality and the divine force that made it possible. As the festival reached its climax, the city glowed with a light-hearted energy that seemed to suspend time itself. The final days were marked by showers of petals and blossoms thrown into the air, a symbolic gesture that mirrored the scattering of seeds and the promise of new beginnings. Fireworks or torchlight processions illuminated the night, their flickering flames a reminder of the sun's warmth and Flora's enduring presence. The Floralia was more than a festival, it was a living testament to the Romans' connection with nature and the divine. Through laughter, dance, and the vibrant beauty of flowers, they honored Flora not as a distant deity but as a presence that touched every facet of their lives. The legacy of the Floralia endures, its echoes found in the spring celebrations of cultures worldwide, a reminder that, like Flora's blossoms, the joy of life is always worth celebrating. The hum of activity filled the fields as farmers bent low, their hands moving rhythmically through the soil. Each seed they planted carried a silent prayer, a hope entwined with the myth of Flora, the goddess who watched over their labor. For the Romans, agriculture was not just a matter of survival, it was a sacred act, one deeply influenced by the mythology surrounding Flora. Her presence was felt in every furrow turned, every stalk that grew tall under the sun. Flora's mythology imbued the act of farming with a sense of divine partnership. As the goddess of flowers and spring, she was intimately connected to the cycles of growth and renewal that defined agricultural life. Romans believed that Flora's blessings were essential for the health of their crops, ensuring not only an abundant harvest but also the fertility of the land itself. Her mythological role went beyond the aesthetic beauty of flowers, she was a protector and nurturer of all things that grew. Farmers paid close attention to the timing of their planting and harvesting, aligning their activities with the cycles of nature that Flora governed. The arrival of spring, marked by the blossoming of flowers, was seen as a signal from Flora herself, a divine indication that the earth was ready to bear fruit once more. These blooms, delicate yet resilient, were considered sacred signs of her favor, and their appearance brought both hope and relief to those who relied on the land. Flora's influence extended to the rituals that accompanied agricultural work. Before planting, farmers often performed simple but heartfelt ceremonies in her honor. They would scatter petals or place garlands of flowers in their fields, believing that these offerings would invite Flora's blessing and encourage the earth to yield its bounty. In some regions, farmers even dedicated small shrines to her at the edges of their fields, creating spaces where they could seek her guidance and protection. These practices were not merely symbolic, they reflected the Romans' understanding of the delicate balance between human effort and natural forces. They saw Flora as a bridge between these realms, a goddess who could mediate between the labor of their hands and the mysteries of growth that lay beyond their control. By honoring Flora, they acknowledged their dependence on the natural world and expressed gratitude for the abundance it provided. Flora's mythology also shaped the Romans' approach to cultivating specific crops. Flowers, of course, held a special place in their agricultural repertoire. Beyond their beauty, certain flowers were believed to have protective or restorative properties, both for the land and the people who worked it. Marigolds, violets, and poppies were often grown alongside crops, their vibrant colors a living tribute to the goddess. But Flora's influence was not limited to flowers alone. Her association with fertility extended to fruit-bearing plants and grains, the staples of Roman agriculture. Orchards and vineyards, vital to the Roman diet and economy, were considered under her care. Farmers cultivating these crops often included flowers in their planting schemes, creating a harmonious blend that celebrated Flora's role in sustaining life. The mythology of Flora also inspired a sense of stewardship among Roman farmers. They saw their work not as a conquest of the land, but as a collaboration with it, guided by the divine hand of the goddess. This mindset encouraged sustainable practices, such as rotating crops and allowing fields to rest, which preserved the fertility of the soil for future generations. The Floralia, Flora's festival, reinforced her connection to agriculture in powerful ways. Held during the height of spring, it was a time when the earth's abundance was celebrated in full. Farmers participated eagerly, their offerings of flowers, fruits, and grains symbolizing the union of human effort and divine blessing. The festival was both a plea for Flora's continued favor and a joyful acknowledgement of her gifts. Flora's mythology also influenced the Romans' view of the land as a living entity, imbued with divine presence. Fields, orchards, and vineyards were not just plots of earth, but sacred spaces where the goddess's spirit dwelled. This belief fostered a profound respect for the environment, a recognition that the land was both a provider and a recipient of care. Even in times of hardship, when crops failed and the earth seemed barren, Flora's mythology offered solace and hope. The Romans believed that her cycles of growth and renewal mirrored the struggles and triumphs of life itself. Just as flowers withered only to bloom again, so too could the land recover and thrive with time and care. Through her mythology, Flora transformed agriculture from a mundane necessity into a sacred endeavor. Her presence reminded the Romans that every seed planted and every flower that bloomed was part of a larger, divine rhythm, a testament to the intricate dance between humanity and the natural world. In honoring Flora, they honored life itself, finding meaning and purpose in the soil beneath their feet. The words flowed like petals scattered by the wind, delicate yet profound, as Roman poets wove Flora into the fabric of their verses. Her name, tied to spring's awakening and the fleeting beauty of blossoms, inspired countless poets to capture her essence in words. To read these poems was to feel the rush of new life, the gentle warmth of spring sunshine, and the intoxicating scent of flowers in bloom. Through poetry, Flora transcended her role as a goddess. She became a muse, an eternal symbol of life's ephemeral splendor. Ovid, the masterful chronicler of Roman mythology, immortalized Flora in his Fasti, a poetic calendar of Roman festivals. His verses painted Flora not as a distant deity but as a vibrant and playful figure, brimming with vitality. In a particularly captivating passage, Ovid recounts how Flora came to preside over flowers. He describes her transformation from a nymph named Chloris into a goddess, gifted dominion over all that blooms. Her story is tinged with magic and romance, her divine beauty mirrored in the flowers she commands. Ovid's portrayal of Flora is lush and evocative. He writes of gardens bursting with color, of flowers opening their delicate faces to the sun as if in reverence to their goddess. In his lines, Flora becomes more than a symbol of nature, she is its pulse, its very heartbeat. Every blooming flower is a testament to her touch, every fragrant breeze a whisper of her presence. The poet's language brings her to life, making her palpable to readers as both divine and deeply connected to the world around them. Other Roman poets found in Flora a source of metaphor and meaning. In Virgil's Georgics, she is an unseen force, a subtle but essential presence in the agricultural cycles that sustain human life. Though she does not appear explicitly, her spirit permeates the verses, a reminder of the harmony between nature and humanity. The fields that flourish, the flowers that adorn the meadows, all speak to her silent, nurturing power. For Horace, the lyric poet of Rome, Flora represented the fleeting beauty of youth and the inevitability of change. In his odes, he often evoked the imagery of blossoms as symbols of life's transience. A flower in full bloom, radiant and ephemeral, mirrored the human experience, brief, poignant, and profoundly beautiful. Through Flora, Horace found a way to express the delicate balance between joy and impermanence, capturing the bittersweet essence of existence. Even the bawdier verses of Roman poets like Martial and Catullus paid homage to Flora, albeit in a different tone. For them, Flora's association with fertility and vitality became a playful metaphor for human passions and desires. Their verses, infused with wit and irreverence, celebrated the goddess with a sense of earthly delight. Though their approach was less reverent, it still acknowledged Flora's central role in the cycle of life. Flora's influence extended beyond explicit references to her name. Roman poets often used flowers, her sacred symbols, as vehicles for their emotions and ideas. The rose, a perennial favorite, became a symbol of love and beauty, while the fragile anemone represented grief and loss. Each flower carried with it a whisper of Flora's presence, a reminder of the goddess who governed their bloom and decay. Through poetry, Flora became a bridge between the divine and the everyday. The imagery of flowers and springtime evoked her spirit, bringing a sense of wonder to even the simplest moments. A single bloom could hold an entire universe of meaning, its delicate petals a testament to the goddess's artistry and the poet's ability to capture it in words. As springtime returned each year, so too did the verses inspired by Flora. Her mythology intertwined with the changing seasons, her presence as constant and as fleeting as the flowers she nurtured. To the poets of Rome, she was not just a deity but an endless source of inspiration, her essence captured in every line that celebrated the beauty, vitality, and transience of life. In the heart of ancient Rome, where marble statues gleamed under the Mediterranean sun and frescoes adorned the walls of opulent villas, Flora emerged as a vision of grace and renewal. Artists sculpted, painted, and etched her image into the cultural consciousness, ensuring her presence lingered in the quiet corners of temples and the vibrant spaces of public gardens. To look upon these works was to feel her breath in the soft bloom of spring and to sense the sacred interwoven with the everyday. In sculpture, Flora often stood as a serene figure, her form imbued with life and elegance. Draped in flowing robes, she carried baskets or garlands of flowers, symbols of her divine connection to nature's beauty. One could almost imagine the scent of blossoms wafting from her marble likeness, the chiseled petals seemingly soft to the touch. Her statues, often placed in temple gardens or fountains, invited worshippers to pause, reflect, and feel the goddess's blessings in their surroundings. These sculptures weren't mere decorations, they were sacred embodiments of Flora's essence, connecting the physical world to the divine. Roman frescoes captured a more dynamic and intimate portrayal of Flora. The walls of Pompeii and Herculaneum, cities preserved in volcanic ash, revealed delicate paintings of the goddess amidst lush gardens. In these frescoes, Flora dances lightly, her figure surrounded by a cascade of flowers. Her presence is ethereal, almost dreamlike, as if she's caught in an eternal moment of spring. Artists used soft, flowing lines and vibrant colors to evoke the vitality of the season she heralded. These paintings turned the walls of Roman homes into sanctuaries of nature, where Flora's spirit seemed to breathe life into the spaces she adorned. Mosaics, with their intricate tesserae, brought Flora to life in vivid detail. Often found in villas and public baths, these artworks celebrated her role as a bringer of beauty and renewal. One notable example shows Flora with an outstretched hand, scattering petals onto the earth below, a gesture of abundance and grace. Each tiny piece of stone and glass formed a part of her divine narrative, creating a visual symphony that celebrated her essence. These mosaics were not just art, they were storytelling, capturing the goddess's role in the cycle of life and the rhythms of the seasons. Coins minted during the Roman Empire also bore Flora's image, a testament to her importance in public life. Her likeness, often accompanied by floral motifs, circulated throughout the empire, a tangible reminder of her presence in the everyday lives of the people. These coins were more than currency, they were symbols of prosperity and the renewal Flora promised. To hold one was to carry a piece of her mythology, her essence intertwined with the economic and cultural pulse of Rome. Public spaces, too, bore Flora's imprint. Gardens, meticulously designed to reflect the harmony of nature, often featured statues and reliefs of the goddess. These gardens served as places of respite and reflection, where Romans could connect with the natural world under Flora's watchful gaze. The arrangement of flowers and plants mirrored her divine aesthetic, a living tribute to her role as a nurturer of growth and beauty. The Floralia, her festival, was another vivid canvas for artistic expression. During these celebrations, actors and performers often adorned themselves as Flora, their costumes a riot of flowers and vibrant colors. Temporary altars and stages were adorned with floral arrangements, transforming the city into a living homage to the goddess. The artistry of the Floralia was ephemeral, like the blooms it celebrated, yet it left an indelible mark on the hearts of those who witnessed it. Flora's presence in Roman art was not confined to grand works or public spaces. Even simple household items bore her image, from pottery to jewelry. These everyday objects turned the mundane into the sacred, allowing Romans to carry a piece of Flora's mythology with them. A painted vase might depict her scattering flowers, while a delicate pendant could feature her likeness, a talisman of renewal and protection. Through art, Flora transcended her mythological origins, becoming a tangible part of Roman life. Each sculpture, fresco, and mosaic whispered her story, turning stone and pigment into a living celebration of the goddess who embodied the beauty and fragility of nature. To encounter her in these works was to feel a connection to the rhythms of the earth and the divine force that made flowers bloom, spring awaken, and life flourish anew. Roman gardens were sanctuaries of beauty and order, where the chaos of the outside world seemed to dissolve amidst carefully arranged blooms and the soothing murmur of fountains. Within these serene havens, Flora's presence was palpable. The goddess of flowers and spring was more than a mythological figure. She was a living essence woven into the design, purpose, and spirit of these gardens. To step into such a space was to feel the gentle embrace of her touch in every petal and leaf. Gardens in ancient Rome were not merely places of leisure, they were sacred spaces where nature and the divine intersected. Flora was at the heart of this connection, embodying growth, beauty, and the life-giving forces of spring. Her influence shaped the way Romans viewed their gardens, not as mere collections of plants, but as living tributes to the goddess who nurtured their bloom. These spaces became extensions of her mythology, where her spirit thrived among the roses, violets, and lilies that adorned them. The hortus, or Roman garden, was often divided into distinct sections, each carefully curated to reflect the harmony of nature. Flora's presence was most keenly felt in the floral displays that dominated these spaces. Beds of flowers, arranged with meticulous care, burst with color and fragrance, creating a sensory feast that echoed the goddess's own vitality. Roses, her sacred blooms, were a staple, their velvety petals symbolizing love and renewal. Other flowers, such as irises and poppies, added their unique hues and scents, turning the garden into a vibrant mosaic of Flora's gifts. Fountains and water features were central to Roman gardens, their cool, clear streams reflecting the lush greenery and vivid blooms. These elements were not merely decorative, they symbolized life and fertility, qualities Flora herself embodied. The sound of flowing water, combined with the rustle of leaves and the hum of bees, created a symphony of nature that seemed to whisper the goddess's presence. Many fountains bore her likeness or were adorned with floral motifs, further solidifying her connection to these tranquil spaces. Statues of Flora often graced these gardens, their marble forms blending seamlessly with the natural surroundings. These sculptures were more than artistic adornments, they were focal points of reverence and inspiration. Placed among the flowers, Flora's statues seemed almost alive, their flowing robes and serene expressions a mirror of the beauty and calm the garden sought to evoke. To see her statue amidst the blooms was to feel her watching over the space, ensuring its harmony and growth. Romans believed that tending to a garden was an act of devotion to Flora. Cultivating flowers and plants was seen as a way to honor her and invite her blessings. The careful pruning of rose bushes, the planting of seeds, and the watering of delicate blooms became rituals of connection to the goddess. Even the act of walking through a garden, admiring its beauty, was a form of silent prayer to Flora, a recognition of her presence in the cycle of life. The concept of the peristyle garden, found in Roman villas, brought Flora's spirit into the heart of the home. These enclosed gardens, surrounded by colonnades, were intimate spaces where families could gather, reflect, and feel the goddess's presence. The flowers and plants within these gardens were chosen not only for their beauty but for their symbolism, each one a living testament to Flora's role as a nurturer of life. The peristyle garden became a sacred retreat, a place where the divine touched the everyday. Public gardens and parks, too, bore Flora's influence. These communal spaces were designed to provide all citizens with a place to connect with nature and, by extension, the goddess herself. Large floral displays and carefully cultivated greenery created an environment where Flora's spirit could thrive. Festivals like the Floralia often spilled into these gardens, turning them into vibrant theaters of celebration, where flowers were not just decorations but sacred offerings. Even in death, Romans sought Flora's presence. Funerary gardens, planted around tombs and mausoleums, were filled with flowers that symbolized renewal and the eternal cycle of life and death. These gardens were a final tribute to Flora, a reminder that her gifts extended beyond life into the afterlife. Roses, violets, and other blooms adorned these spaces, their fleeting beauty a poignant reflection of human existence. In Roman gardens, Flora was omnipresent, her spirit captured in every detail. The vibrant colors, intoxicating scents, and harmonious design all spoke of her influence, creating spaces that were not just gardens but sanctuaries of her divinity. To walk among these gardens was to feel a profound connection to the goddess of flowers and spring, to experience her blessings in every bloom, and to find solace in the natural beauty she so lovingly bestowed. When the Floralia began, Rome seemed to burst into life overnight. Streets and public spaces transformed into vibrant celebrations of color, sound, and energy. Flowers adorned every corner, roses, violets, and other blooms were woven into garlands and scattered freely, their petals carpeting the ground like a tribute to Flora herself. The air grew heavy with the perfume of blossoms, mingling with the lively sounds of music and laughter. For Romans, this was no ordinary festival, it was a time to honor the goddess of flowers and spring with uninhibited joy. The festival officially started on April 28th and lasted 6 days, each one brimming with activities that reflected the essence of Flora. At sunrise, priests and priestesses of Flora began the rituals with solemn offerings in her temple. The altar, adorned with freshly picked flowers, stood as a beacon of life and fertility. Offerings of honey and milk, considered sacred to the goddess, were poured out, while incense wafted through the air. These quiet moments were meant to invoke Flora's blessings, setting the tone for the jubilant festivities to follow. Once the sacred rites concluded, the festival spilled out into the streets, a cascade of unrestrained revelry. Performers took center stage, with actors, musicians, and dancers creating a spectacle of creativity. Comedic plays, often laden with bawdy humor, became a highlight of the Floralia. These performances, unapologetically spirited, reminded spectators of life's pleasures and Flora's role in their abundance. The laughter that filled the air was itself an offering, a celebration of the goddess's vitality. The games of the Floralia were equally extravagant. Gladiatorial matches, a staple of Roman entertainment, took on a lighter tone during this festival. Unlike the usual bloodshed of the arena, these contests often involved mock battles or animal hunts that highlighted skill and courage rather than brutality. The Colosseum and other amphitheaters were adorned with flowers, their usual starkness softened by Flora's influence. It was as if the goddess herself had tempered the fierceness of these spectacles, replacing it with playful competition. Flowers were not just decorations, they became active participants in the celebration. Revelers wore floral crowns and draped themselves in garlands, embodying the goddess's essence. Vendors lined the streets, selling bouquets and wreaths, ensuring that no one was without Flora's signature adornments. Crowds tossed petals into the air, creating a whirlwind of color that seemed to dance with the energy of the festival. Even animals were adorned, horses and other creatures paraded through the streets, their manes braided with blossoms. A unique tradition of the Floralia involved the release of hares and goats into the city streets. These animals, symbols of fertility and life, roamed freely, a living tribute to the goddess. Children squealed with delight as they chased after the animals, their laughter adding to the cacophony of celebration. This act wasn't merely symbolic, it was a living expression of Flora's gift of life, a reminder of the interconnectedness of all living things. Feasting was an integral part of the Floralia. Markets overflowed with fruits, nuts, and fresh produce, their abundance reflecting the season's bounty. Citizens gathered in homes, taverns, and public squares to share meals, drink wine, and toast to Flora's generosity. The food itself was often adorned with edible flowers, a nod to the goddess's presence even in their nourishment. These communal meals strengthened bonds and emphasized the shared joy of the celebration. The Floralia also had a distinctly inclusive spirit. Unlike many Roman festivals that catered primarily to the elite, this celebration welcomed all. Slaves and commoners participated alongside the wealthy, sharing in the same festivities and honoring Flora with equal fervor. This sense of unity under the goddess's gaze was rare in Roman society and added a profound layer of meaning to the festival. For 6 days, social barriers seemed to dissolve, replaced by the shared reverence for Flora's gifts. As the days turned into nights, the festival took on a more hedonistic tone. Lamps and torches lit the streets, casting a golden glow over the revelers. Music grew louder, dances more animated, and wine flowed freely. The celebrations became a release of inhibition, a testament to Flora's association with vitality and pleasure. Romans danced under the stars, their movements mirroring the sway of flowers in the wind, their laughter carrying into the night. The culmination of the Floralia was a grand procession in Flora's honor. Citizens marched through the streets, carrying statues of the goddess adorned with fresh blooms. The procession moved toward her temple, where final offerings were made and blessings were sought. As the festival drew to a close, the city seemed to sigh in contentment, its streets and people rejuvenated by Flora's spirit. Though the flowers would fade, their beauty and the goddess's essence lingered in the hearts of all who had celebrated her. In those 6 days of unrestrained joy and beauty, the Floralia wasn't just a festival, it was an embodiment of Flora herself. Through laughter, flowers, and shared moments, Romans felt her presence not as a distant deity but as a vibrant force pulsing through their lives, reminding them of the fleeting yet precious nature of spring and the eternal cycles of renewal she governed. In the Roman calendar, time wasn't just a series of numbered days. It was woven with meaning, each month and festival intricately tied to the rhythms of life, nature, and the gods. Flora, the goddess of flowers and spring, found her place in this grand tapestry, influencing not only how Romans viewed the changing seasons, but also how they celebrated the cycles of life. The Roman calendar, rooted in both agricultural and religious observances, highlighted Flora's significance in the critical transition from winter's barren stillness to spring's fertile awakening. This was a time when the earth seemed to breathe anew, and flowers, Flora's domain, became symbols of life's resurgence. Her presence was felt most prominently in the spring months, particularly during the festival of Floralia, held from April 28th to May 3rd. These days were more than a celebration, they were a recalibration of the Roman psyche, a collective acknowledgement of nature's power and renewal. April, known as Aprilis, was deeply tied to growth and fertility. It was believed that the name itself derived from the Latin apriere, meaning to open, as this was the time when buds and blossoms opened to the world. Flora was not the only goddess celebrated during this month, but her influence was undeniable. She personified the delicate balance of nature's artistry, bringing life and beauty in equal measure. The month's association with new beginnings and blooming aligned perfectly with her role as the harbinger of spring. While Flora's festival was rooted in her agricultural connections, its placement in the calendar reflected a broader societal understanding of time. The Roman year was divided into 2 primary seasons, the planting season and the harvesting season. The Floralia marked the official acknowledgement of the planting season's vitality. Farmers, dependent on the whims of nature, turned to Flora for her blessings, hoping for fertile fields and abundant yields. Her presence in the calendar was not just symbolic but practical, a deity whose goodwill could mean the difference between prosperity and hardship. The days leading up to the Floralia were filled with anticipation. Romans prepared not only for the revelry but also for the agricultural tasks that lay ahead. Flora's association with fertility extended beyond flowers to encompass all forms of growth, including crops. As such, rituals performed during this time often had dual purposes, to honor the goddess and to invoke her blessings on the land. The act of sowing seeds was deeply intertwined with her mythos, each seed a tiny vessel of hope entrusted to Flora's care. Flora's influence extended beyond April. May, the month following her festival, carried her energy forward. Known as Maius, this month was dedicated to Maya, a goddess of growth and vitality, creating a thematic continuation of Flora's domain. The transition from Floralia to the festivals of May was seamless, a testament to how Flora's presence bridged the vibrancy of spring with the promise of summer. Her essence lingered, evident in the flourishing gardens and fields that bore the fruits of her blessings. The Roman calendar wasn't static, it evolved to accommodate the shifting needs and beliefs of Roman society. Yet Flora remained a constant, her role unwavering in a world where time and nature were deeply interconnected. The agricultural calendar, tied to the cycles of planting and harvesting, kept her relevance alive. Farmers turned to her not just during the Floralia but throughout the growing season, seeking her guidance and protection as their crops matured under the sun. Flora's association with the Roman calendar also reflected a deeper cultural appreciation for balance. Her springtime celebrations offered a counterpoint to the harsher, more somber rituals of winter. While festivals like Saturnalia provided relief in the cold months, Floralia symbolized a different kind of renewal, one of color, light, and life. The calendar became a reflection of Flora's own duality, a goddess of delicate flowers and robust fertility, embodying both fragility and strength. Even as the Roman calendar underwent reforms, such as the Julian calendar introduced by Julius Caesar, Flora's place in the seasonal rhythm remained unaltered. Her festival persisted, a marker of continuity in a society that revered tradition as much as progress. The careful alignment of her celebrations with the agricultural calendar ensured her worship wasn't just a relic of myth, but an active, living tradition. Flora's presence in the Roman calendar was more than a reminder of spring's beauty, it was a testament to her integral role in the lives of the people. Through her, the Romans found a way to honor not just the natural world, but the cycles that governed their existence. In every flower that bloomed, every field that sprouted green, they saw her hand, a constant force guiding them through the rhythms of time. And though the calendar pages would turn, Flora's essence remained timeless, an eternal spring in the heart of Roman life. In the Roman world, fertility was more than a biological phenomenon, it was a divine force that shaped the rhythm of life. At the heart of this sacred cycle stood Flora, the goddess whose dominion over flowers extended far into the realms of fertility and abundance. Her connection to fertility rites was not merely symbolic, it was a powerful acknowledgement of her role as the life-bringer, the one who coaxed the earth into bloom and ensured the continuity of life. The rites associated with Flora were raw, vibrant, and unapologetically joyous. They celebrated the essence of creation, not just in the fields, but in the bodies of men and women who sought her blessings for progeny. These rituals, often intertwined with the festival of Floralia, pulsated with an energy that transcended mere revelry. They were acts of devotion and hope, aimed at ensuring the fertile balance of nature and humanity alike. During the Floralia, fertility rites took center stage, their purpose clear: to honor Flora and invite her vitality into every facet of Roman life. Flowers, symbols of both beauty and reproduction, were at the heart of these celebrations. Their petals, vibrant and fragrant, became offerings to the goddess, scattered on altars and in fields as gestures of gratitude and supplication. Romans believed that by pleasing Flora, they could secure her favor, ensuring bountiful harvests and healthy offspring. The rituals often involved performances that blurred the lines between the sacred and the theatrical. Dancing, an expression of life's pulse, became a central component. Participants adorned themselves with garlands of flowers, their movements mirroring the rhythms of nature. These dances were not mere entertainment, they were symbolic acts of renewal, echoing the cycles of growth and decay that defined life. The air was thick with the scent of blossoms and the sounds of celebration, creating an atmosphere where the divine and the earthly converged. One of the most striking aspects of Flora's fertility rites was their unabashed celebration of sensuality. Romans recognized the connection between human reproduction and the fecundity of the earth. This acknowledgement was neither hidden nor shamed, but embraced as a fundamental truth. The rites often included performances and games that were both playful and provocative, embodying the life-affirming spirit of Flora herself. Through laughter and indulgence, participants honored the goddess who made life flourish. Farmers played a particularly important role in these rites. They understood, perhaps more than anyone, the delicate balance of fertility. For them, Flora was not just the goddess of flowers, but the guardian of their livelihoods. They performed rituals in their fields, invoking Flora's blessings to ensure that the soil would yield its fruits. Seeds were sown with prayers, each one a promise to Flora, a pact between humanity and nature. The fertility of the land was a mirror of human vitality, and Flora stood at the nexus of both. Fertility rites dedicated to Flora also reflected the collective fears and hopes of the Roman people. They lived in a world where the line between abundance and famine was perilously thin. A failed harvest could mean disaster, and the inability to conceive could be seen as a personal tragedy. By honoring Flora, they sought to ward off these threats, placing their trust in her ability to nurture and sustain life. The rites became acts of reassurance, moments when the community could come together and reaffirm their connection to the divine cycles of nature. The symbolism of flowers in these rites went beyond their beauty. Each bloom carried its own meaning, its own connection to Flora's essence. Roses, with their intoxicating scent, symbolized love and passion. Daisies, simple and pure, represented innocence and new beginnings. Poppies, vibrant and fleeting, reminded the Romans of life's fragility and the need to cherish its moments. These flowers became the language of the rites, each one a prayer offered to the goddess. As night fell during the Floralia, the fertility rites often took on a more intimate tone. By the flickering light of torches, offerings were made in quiet reverence. Couples seeking Flora's blessings for children would leave gifts of flowers and honey, symbols of sweetness and fertility. The night was filled with whispered prayers and the rustling of petals, a time when the barriers between the mortal and the divine seemed to fade. These rites were not limited to the grand celebrations of the Floralia. Throughout the year, Romans turned to Flora in private moments of need. Women who longed for children, farmers who faced uncertain harvests, and lovers seeking her favor would offer their prayers and gifts. Flora's fertility was not confined to the festival, it was a constant presence in their lives, a reminder of the cycles that sustained them. Through these rites, Flora's connection to fertility became more than myth, it was a lived reality, a force that shaped Roman existence. Her blessings touched every aspect of life, from the fields that fed them to the children who carried their legacy forward. In Flora, the Romans saw the embodiment of life's resilience and beauty, a goddess whose power ensured that the world continued to bloom. And so, with every petal and prayer, they celebrated the life she brought into their world. Flora was not just a goddess of flowers and spring in the eyes of the Roman people, her influence reached deeply into the political and social fabric of Rome, shaping both public life and private affairs. Her connection to fertility and abundance made her an essential figure in the Roman political sphere, where power and prosperity were intricately tied to the fertility of the land, the health of the population, and the success of the empire itself. Her presence in Roman politics was subtle but undeniable, woven into the rituals, symbols, and decisions that defined the empire's strength. Roman politics, especially during the Republic and early Empire, was heavily influenced by religious and ritualistic practices. Every major political event or military campaign was framed by a religious observance, often invoking the blessings of gods and goddesses. Flora, in her role as the goddess of growth, fertility, and renewal, was a natural figure to be called upon in times of need, particularly when it came to matters of the land, prosperity, and the continuation of the Roman lineage. Politicians and generals alike sought Flora's favor, knowing the importance of her blessings for both agriculture and the well-being of the Roman people. The fertility of the land directly impacted the Roman economy, particularly in the vast agricultural regions of Italy and the provinces. A poor harvest could lead to food shortages, economic downturns, and social unrest, while a bountiful harvest was a sign of the gods' favor. Political leaders were well aware of this, and invoking Flora was a way to ensure the gods were on their side. During times of war, when soldiers marched off to battle, Flora's blessings were often sought to ensure victory and safe return. The promise of prosperity and fertility on the home front was directly tied to the success of Rome's military endeavors. The prosperity of the empire depended on the resources of its lands, and that prosperity was a reflection of Flora's power over nature's abundance. Political leaders, therefore, found it prudent to honor her, hoping for a good harvest, fertile lands, and the safety of their soldiers. The state religion of Rome, known as religio, was a complex system of rituals and practices that extended into every facet of life. Public ceremonies were often presided over by politicians or magistrates, and many of these ceremonies had a direct link to the Roman gods. Flora's position in this system was not only a reflection of her importance in agricultural life, but also a political tool. By aligning themselves with Flora's divine favor, politicians could enhance their own reputation and strengthen their public image. Roman leaders were keen to demonstrate their ability to secure prosperity for the people. One of the ways they did this was through the observance of the Floralia, which was an official state festival. The Floralia, celebrated in late April and early May, was a time when the entire city came together in celebration of Flora's gifts. Public feasts, games, and theatrical performances were held in her honor, serving not only to appease the goddess but to display the wealth and cultural strength of Rome. By sponsoring such events, politicians could gain the favor of the people, ensuring their continued support and loyalty. Flora's influence in Roman politics was also reflected in her symbolic representation on coins, statues, and monuments. Emperors and political figures often used her image to solidify their connection to the goddess and, by extension, to the fertility and prosperity that Flora represented. Coins featuring Flora's image were often issued during times of agricultural success or peace, signifying the emperor's role in ensuring the bounty of the land. In this way, Flora's image became a political tool, a means of associating the ruler with nature's abundance and the health of the empire. Politicians also understood the power of festivals in shaping public opinion. The Floralia, as one of the most significant festivals in the Roman religious calendar, offered an opportunity to demonstrate the state's favor with the goddess. It was not just a celebration of nature, it was a political event, one that helped to affirm the emperor's legitimacy and reinforce the idea that the state's prosperity was directly tied to divine favor. By participating in the Floralia, politicians could send a message to the people that they were champions of fertility, prosperity, and the continued greatness of Rome. At times, political leaders used the festival to further their agendas. Emperors such as Augustus and Hadrian, who saw themselves as restorers of Roman glory, often associated themselves with Flora's symbolic powers. Augustus, in particular, promoted an image of himself as the bringer of peace and prosperity, aligning himself with gods like Flora to reinforce his political narrative. In this context, Flora was not just a goddess, she was an essential component of the emperor's political brand. Moreover, Flora's association with fertility and renewal extended beyond agriculture to the very fabric of Roman society. In a world where family and lineage were of utmost importance, her blessings were seen as essential for the continuation of the Roman gens, or family lines. Politicians who desired to solidify their power knew that securing Flora's favor for their own families would help ensure a prosperous future. Children, the future of Rome, were seen as the literal and metaphorical seeds of the empire, and securing the goddess's blessing was seen as an essential part of ensuring Rome's survival. The political use of Flora's image and influence also found its way into imperial propaganda. Emperors often portrayed themselves as divinely chosen figures who had the favor of the gods, and Flora, as a goddess of abundance and fertility, was an important part of this narrative. By highlighting their connections to Flora, emperors positioned themselves as protectors of the land and the people, emphasizing their role as providers of prosperity and stability. Flora's role in Roman politics was multifaceted, blending religious, social, and political elements into a cohesive force. She was not just a goddess of flowers, she was a goddess of the very lifeblood of Rome, its people, its land, and its future. By invoking her blessings, political leaders ensured not only their own power but the continued vitality of the Roman state itself. Flora's power was more than divine, it was a symbol of Rome's ability to grow, to renew, and to thrive, no matter the challenges that lay ahead. In every petal that bloomed under her watch, the future of Rome was secured, and those in power knew it. There is a timeless connection between Flora, the Roman goddess of flowers and spring, and Zephyrus, the gentle west wind. Their mythological union is one that speaks of renewal, love, and the harmonious flow of nature's rhythms. In the myths, Zephyrus, the warm and tender wind, carries the breath of spring across the lands, bringing life to the earth. Flora, in turn, stands as the goddess of that life, the embodiment of nature's beauty and vitality. Together, they are not only lovers in myth, but essential forces of the changing seasons and the blossoming of life. Their story begins with a shift in the winds of fate, as many great tales do. Zephyrus, one of the four Anemoi, wind gods, was known for his gentle and affectionate nature. Unlike the harsh north winds, which bring cold and frost, Zephyrus brought the promise of warmth and rebirth. His breath was the one that softened the earth after the long, cruel winters, coaxing the flowers to bloom and the trees to sprout their first buds. Flora, the goddess of flowers and spring, was a natural partner for him. She needed the winds to carry her seeds, to scatter her blossoms across the land. The love story between Flora and Zephyrus is one of those enchanting moments when nature itself seems to come alive with emotion. Their union is said to have led to the birth of the flowers that bloom in spring. Zephyrus, with his tender whispers, would blow across the fields, awakening Flora's sleeping seeds. And Flora, in her infinite grace, would answer with the burst of colors that filled the earth with life. Their relationship was a dance of mutual need, where one could not fully exist without the other. Zephyrus needed Flora's fertility to spread across the land, and Flora needed Zephyrus's warmth to carry her life-giving essence to places unknown. The myth of Flora and Zephyrus goes beyond simple romance. It is a metaphor for the natural processes that govern life itself. Together, they represent the relationship between air and earth, wind and flower, that which nurtures life and that which gives life to the earth. Zephyrus's winds carry Flora's pollen and seeds, enabling them to spread far and wide, reaching places Flora's roots could never touch. In turn, Flora's blooms give the air a vibrant color and fragrance that Zephyrus breathes in deeply, sharing their beauty with the world. In one version of their myth, the union between Flora and Zephyrus leads to the birth of a son, Carpus, the spirit of fruit and harvest. Carpus, like his parents, is a product of the earth's abundance, and his role in the myth echoes the culmination of their combined powers. What began as the first tender blooms of spring would eventually mature into the full bounty of summer and autumn. Flora's flowers, nurtured by Zephyrus, would eventually give way to fruits, a symbol of life cycles and the rewarding nature of spring's labor. This myth carries with it a deeper symbolism that speaks to the interconnectedness of all life. Flora and Zephyrus are not isolated forces, they are two parts of a whole. The earth, in all its beauty and fertility, cannot exist without the air to carry the seeds, the warmth to nurture them. Their love and partnership are a metaphor for the ways in which the world depends on balance and cooperation. The winds and the flowers are inextricably linked, much like the life cycles of plants and animals, or the interdependence of all living things on the planet. Their relationship symbolizes the delicate yet powerful balance that keeps the world turning. Their union also has a sensual aspect, one that speaks to the abundance of life itself. The warmth of Zephyrus's breath upon the earth stirs Flora's blooms to life, and the act of procreation becomes a symbol of the natural cycles that govern all of existence. Their love, which sparks life, is a reflection of the act of creation itself. In the blossoming flowers that emerge from their union, there is not only beauty but a tangible connection between the divine and the natural world. The flowers that sprout as a result of their love are a direct reflection of the goddess's essence, imbued with the spirit of both Flora and Zephyrus. Their relationship was celebrated not only in myth but in art and literature. Roman poets, influenced by these myths, often wrote of Flora and Zephyrus as embodiments of the forces that shape the world. In depictions of Flora, she is often seen surrounded by flowers that bloom in Zephyrus's wake. The imagery of Zephyrus, sometimes pictured as a youthful, handsome figure with a crown of flowers, blowing his breath across the earth, was used to convey the idea of spring's arrival. Flora's radiant presence, on the other hand, was a symbol of life's vibrancy and the sensual beauty of the natural world. Their myth also had a profound influence on Roman festivals, particularly the Floralia. The festival, dedicated to Flora, often included performances and celebrations that honored the fertility of the land and the joyous arrival of spring. It was during these celebrations that the marriage of Flora and Zephyrus was most often invoked, with the people of Rome praying for the goddess's blessings of fertility and abundance, while also paying tribute to the wind that carried those blessings across the land. The festival itself was an embodiment of their myth, a joyous acknowledgement of the forces of nature working together to bring new life to the world. Flora and Zephyrus, together, symbolize the eternal dance of life's renewal. The earth and the air, the flowers and the wind, come together in a harmony that sustains the world. Their myth transcends the realm of romance. It speaks to the deeper cycles of nature and the intricate balance of forces that allow life to flourish. As long as the winds blow and the flowers bloom, their love will continue to shape the seasons and sustain the beauty of the earth. And every breeze that carries the scent of blossoms, and every flower that opens to the sun, Flora and Zephyrus live on, a testament to the enduring power of nature's love. The story of Flora and Juno is one of intrigue, rivalry, and ultimately, harmony between two powerful and divine female figures in Roman mythology. It's a tale of contrasts: Flora, the light-hearted, playful goddess of flowers and spring, and Juno, the queen of the gods, protector of marriage and the family, stern and regal in her authority. Their story isn't just a rivalry between two goddesses, it's a myth that speaks to the tensions between youth and age, freedom and control, nature and order. It all begins during the early days of the Roman Empire, when the divine beings that roamed the earth were full of passion, power, and pride. The goddess Flora, known for her beauty and her ability to bring the earth into bloom, caught the attention of Juno, who was fiercely protective of her place among the gods. Juno, with her commanding presence and her role as the protector of women, found herself somewhat threatened by Flora's carefree, innocent dominion over nature. For while Juno was venerated for her authority and her dignified role, Flora was admired for her vibrant and sensual connection to the earth. In a moment of jealousy, Juno cast a critical eye on Flora. To her, Flora's way of life, her endless dance with the winds, and her light-hearted beauty were too wild, too untamed, and too uncontrolled. They were a stark contrast to Juno's own structured and principled existence. It was said that, one day, Juno confronted Flora, demanding that she relinquish her powers over the flowers and the spring. Juno's words were sharp, her voice ringing with divine authority. "Who are you," Juno declared, "to command the earth's blooms and blossoms without my permission? You have no place here. Nature is mine to govern." Flora, always the embodiment of gentleness and joy, was unshaken. She laughed softly, her voice as sweet as the flowers she gave life to. "I do not seek power, dear Juno. I only wish to share the earth's beauty, to fill the world with the colors of life and growth. Flowers are not for ruling, they are for delighting in. I do not wish to challenge you." But Juno would not be swayed. "You must understand, Flora," she insisted, "that there is a place for everything, and everyone must know their station. I am the goddess of marriage, of order, of women. You," she paused with a flicker of disdain, "are but a playful spirit, adrift in the winds of spring. Your wild nature has no place among the divine." Flora, however, was wise in her innocence. She knew the importance of balance, the necessity of both structure and freedom. Rather than retreating from the challenge, Flora offered a solution. "Perhaps," she said softly, "we can each find our place in harmony. You may rule the heavens and the heavens alone, Juno, but the earth, the flowers and the bloom, is where I reside. I ask for nothing more." But Juno, consumed with pride, refused to accept Flora's proposal. "You must choose, Flora," she said, her eyes narrowed with the weight of her divine authority. "If you wish to remain in your bloom, you must prove your worthiness. Bring forth a gift of equal beauty and power as my own." Flora's heart, though light and free, knew the challenge that lay before her. Juno's power was not one to be dismissed easily, and yet Flora's domain, the flowers, the spring, the life that sprouted with each new season, was no less significant. So, Flora did what she knew best. She created a bloom so beautiful, so rich with life, that it dazzled the heavens and the earth alike. She called upon the winds, the rays of the sun, and the soft rains to help her. From the soil, she coaxed a flower unlike any other, a perfect blossom of every color, vibrant and full of life, its scent sweet enough to carry across miles of land. This flower, said to be as radiant as the dawn itself, symbolized the eternal cycle of life, renewal, and beauty that Flora controlled. It was a gift that no other flower had ever matched. When Juno saw the flower, her heart softened. She had expected Flora to wither under the pressure, to shrink away from the challenge. But what Flora had created was not just a flower, it was a testament to the power of nature, a reflection of the earth's eternal beauty, and the endless cycle of life and death, bloom and fade, that Juno herself could never fully understand. In that moment, Juno saw something in Flora that she had never seen before: true power, a power not of control or command, but of creation and life. Flora's blooms were not simply fleeting, they were eternal in their own way. They grew, they bloomed, they withered, but they would always return, a cycle of renewal and resurrection that the earth relied on. Juno, humbled by Flora's gift, realized that the power of the earth's beauty could never be ruled in the same way as the heavens. It was free, unpredictable, and wild, qualities that could never be contained or controlled by her divine will. The two goddesses, once at odds, stood before each other in newfound respect. "Your flowers," Juno said, her voice now gentle, "are a gift to the world, Flora. They remind us of the cycles of life, of the beauty and change, and the harmony between all things. I see now that you do not threaten me. You compliment me." Flora smiled, her heart light once more. "And you, Juno, remind the world of the importance of order, of structure, and of protection. Without that, the earth's beauty would have no foundation." From that day forward, Flora and Juno understood their divine roles in harmony with one another. Flora would continue to rule the flowers and the blooming earth, while Juno would protect the sanctity of marriage and the family, guiding the heavens with her unyielding hand. Together, they embodied the balance of life and order, of freedom and structure. The tale of Flora and Juno lives on in the winds of spring, where the flowers bloom in defiance of winter's cold, reminding the world of the divine forces that shape the earth and its cycles. Their myth teaches us that there is a place for both freedom and structure, for beauty and power, and that only through understanding and respect can true harmony be achieved. Flora and Venus, two powerful figures in Roman mythology, each represented different aspects of beauty, love, and life. While their domains were distinctly separate, their stories intertwined in ways that reveal the balance between love's tenderness and the vitality of nature. The relationship between these two goddesses was one that echoed both conflict and harmony, illustrating the complex ways in which the forces of nature and human emotion could collide and coexist. Flora, the goddess of flowers and spring, was known for her association with growth, renewal, and the vibrant colors that painted the world after winter's long grip. Her influence over the natural world was marked by her ability to bring life to the earth, turning barren fields into lush gardens bursting with life. Flowers, under her dominion, were symbols of beauty, fertility, and the ever-turning wheel of life. Venus, on the other hand, was the goddess of love, beauty, and desire. She ruled over romantic passion, attraction, and the deep emotional connections that bind people together. Venus was not just a goddess of sensual love, but also of divine beauty, her very presence an embodiment of allure that could captivate gods and mortals alike. Her powers were vast, controlling not only the hearts of lovers but also the harmony and disharmony that love could bring to the world. The tale between Flora and Venus begins when Venus, in all her glory, looks upon the earth with a deep longing for something more. Her beauty was well known across the heavens, and she reveled in the admiration of gods and men. Yet, something was missing in her perfect world. Venus craved the same vibrancy, the same energy that nature itself seemed to possess. Her beauty, though captivating, was cold without the warmth of the earth to give it life. In her quest to find this missing spark, Venus turned to Flora, the goddess who could give the world that radiant life. Venus approached Flora with an offer, knowing that the goddess of flowers could bring about the very vitality Venus sought. "Flora," Venus said with a voice as smooth as silk, "your flowers are a wonder, the earth's most divine creations. They are born from the earth, kissed by the sun, and nurtured by the winds. But what you fail to understand is that they lack the greatest force of all, love." Flora, ever playful and kind, raised an eyebrow at Venus' words. She admired Venus for her beauty, but she didn't entirely understand what the goddess was trying to say. Love, to Flora, was something more natural, something born from the earth's rhythms, not the forceful will of a goddess. "You speak of love," Flora replied, "but do you not see? My flowers are love itself. Each petal, each bloom, speaks of nature's deepest affections, the love between the earth and the sky, the love between the sun and the rain, the love between life and death. My flowers are born of that pure love." Venus, however, was not satisfied. She saw in Flora's flowers a form of beauty that was magnificent but lacked the passion, the fire of the heart that she herself embodied. She knew the power of love and its ability to transform the world, and she wanted to infuse that power into Flora's creations. "I do not seek the beauty of the earth alone," Venus said, her eyes sparkling with divine energy. "I seek to ignite in your flowers the flame of desire, the burning passion that moves souls and stirs hearts. You, Flora, have the means to bring forth beauty, but I can give that beauty the soul of love." Flora, with her soft heart and bright spirit, was hesitant. She was proud of her flowers and the way they bloomed with nature's harmony. But Venus' words were tempting. What if love could indeed transform her creations into something even more extraordinary? And so, after much thought, Flora agreed to Venus' proposal. With a simple nod, Flora allowed Venus to weave her magic into the very fibers of the flowers she nurtured. Venus, using her divine powers, infused the blooms with a deep, irresistible allure. The petals of the flowers shimmered with a new intensity, and their scent became intoxicating, a perfume that whispered the deepest desires of the heart. The result was breathtaking. Flora's flowers now carried with them not only the promise of life, but also the irresistible pull of love. A simple rose, once a symbol of innocence and beauty, became a symbol of passionate longing, while delicate violets whispered sweet nothings to anyone who came near. The flowers began to radiate with an energy that was at once tender and wild, capable of stirring emotions that had long lain dormant in the hearts of gods and men. Yet, with this new magic came a change. Venus' influence on Flora's flowers was undeniable, but it was not without consequences. As the flowers bloomed with the power of love, they also brought with them the complexities of desire, longing, jealousy, and even heartbreak. The earth, which had once been the peaceful domain of Flora's nurturing hand, now became a place where emotions ran deep and unpredictable. Lovers fell in love more passionately, but they also fought more fiercely, as the flower's beauty awakened desires that were sometimes impossible to control. Flora watched as her beloved blooms became the center of human longing and strife. While she had given Venus the power to shape her creations, she began to realize that love, in all its beauty, could also bring pain and chaos. Venus' gifts had made her flowers more beautiful than ever, but they had also made them more dangerous. Despite the turbulence that love brought to the earth, Flora could not deny the magic that Venus had given her creations. The flowers, now imbued with the power of both nature and love, held a divine beauty that captured the essence of both the earth and the heart. They became a symbol of both the fleeting joy and the deep sorrow that love could bring, a reminder that life, in all its forms, was a delicate balance of light and dark. The relationship between Flora and Venus remained one of respect and understanding, though it was no longer free of tension. Flora came to appreciate that Venus' love brought depth to her flowers, and Venus understood that true beauty could only exist when it was rooted in the earth's rhythms. Their collaboration, while complicated, had given birth to a new kind of beauty, one that was more profound, more emotional, and more human than either goddess could have achieved alone. Their myth serves as a reminder that love, in all its forms, is as wild and uncontrollable as the flowers that bloom in the spring, a force that can create and destroy, heal and hurt, but ultimately, always leaves the earth more alive than before. In the myth of Persephone, Flora plays a subtle yet significant role that intertwines with the cycle of seasons, the power of nature, and the ever-present themes of life and death. Persephone, daughter of Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, was abducted by Hades, the god of the underworld. Her disappearance caused a great grief in her mother, who neglected the earth in her mourning, causing the plants to wither and the crops to fail. This is where Flora, goddess of flowers and spring, becomes a quiet but essential presence in the unfolding drama. The myth of Persephone is one of deep sorrow and hope, where the balance of the earth's fertility hinges on the interplay between the gods and their dominion over nature. Flora, as the goddess of growth, beauty, and spring, symbolizes the vitality of the earth that is awakened each year. Her role in the myth reflects the natural rhythms of the world, where life and death are constantly in motion, one following the other in an eternal cycle. Flora's involvement with Persephone can be seen through her connection to the seasons. When Persephone is kidnapped by Hades and taken to the underworld, Demeter's grief causes the earth to fall into a state of mourning. The earth, once lush and full of life, grows barren and cold. It is Flora's essence that is missing from this time of desolation. Without Flora's touch, the flowers do not bloom and the land lies dormant. It is only through her influence, alongside Demeter's eventual restoration of order, that the cycle of nature begins to turn once more. Flora represents the rejuvenation of the earth, the force that ensures life returns when it seems lost. While Demeter's sorrow and Persephone's abduction cause the earth to die in winter, it is Flora who brings spring back into the world. She is the one who fills the earth with vibrant color and sweet fragrance when Persephone returns from the underworld. Flora's role is a reminder of the cyclical nature of life. Birth and death are not separate but intertwined. Through Flora, the earth finds its way back to vitality. In one interpretation of the myth, Flora's role is also that of a mediator between Persephone's two worlds. As the goddess of flowers, she understands the delicate balance between life and death. In the time when Persephone is in the underworld, Flora might be seen as the keeper of the earth's essence, ensuring that life is never fully extinguished even in times of darkness. When Persephone returns to the earth in the spring, Flora's flowers bloom in joyous greeting, marking the return of the goddess to the land of the living. Flora's flowers serve as symbols of rebirth, of the earth's capacity to regenerate after periods of loss and dormancy. There is also an emotional connection between Flora and Persephone. Persephone, as the queen of the underworld, becomes both a symbol of the dead and a figure of transformation, torn between her mother's love for her and the dark depths of her realm. Flora, in contrast, is tied to the earth's beauty and life, yet she understands the inevitability of change. Flora might be seen as offering a comforting presence to Persephone during her time in the underworld, a reminder of the natural world that awaits her return. And when Persephone emerges from Hades' grasp, it is Flora's gentle touch that reminds the world that life always finds a way to bloom again, no matter how long the winter. In Roman times, the intersection of Flora's role with Persephone's story would have been seen in a more symbolic light. Flora, as the goddess who presides over the growth and flowering of the earth, represents the hope that follows sorrow. Her mythological connections to renewal and fertility contrast with Persephone's dual existence in the underworld and the living world. Both goddesses represent the annual cycle of growth, death, and rebirth, and their stories are interwoven with the seasonal changes that govern the earth. Flora's flowers, bright and filled with life, would bloom in the spring to celebrate Persephone's return. The colorful blossoms, symbolizing love and fertility, would bloom not just for Persephone but as a tribute to the powerful forces of nature that both Persephone and Flora embody. Their shared connection to the cycles of life mirrors the balance that must be maintained between the forces of death and life. The flowers that Flora commands carry the promise that the earth will never be left desolate, no matter how dark the days may seem. In the greater context of the myth, Flora's role provides a necessary counterbalance to the story of Persephone. Without Flora's springtime return, there would be no healing from the sorrow of the underworld. The flowers, which Flora commands, are not only physical manifestations of nature's power but also emotional representations of the healing process. Through the death and rebirth of the seasons, Flora's connection to Persephone reveals a cycle that is at once heartbreaking and beautiful. The story of Persephone and Flora is, in essence, a reflection of the eternal struggle between life and death, light and darkness, and how, through the bond between these goddesses, life always emerges victorious once more. Flora's influence and legacy stretch far beyond the confines of ancient Rome, with her presence felt in the myths and stories of various cultures, each interpreting the goddess in their own unique ways. Though she originated as a Roman goddess, associated with flowers, spring, and fertility, her legend has resonated through different lands and eras, adapting to the beliefs and traditions of different societies. In these legends, Flora takes on new forms, reflecting the universal reverence for nature and the changing seasons. In the realm of Greek mythology, Flora's counterpart is Chloris, the goddess of flowers, spring, and new growth. The Greeks, like the Romans, held deep reverence for the life-giving force of nature, and Chloris embodied that force. In some versions of the myth, Chloris was a nymph, a nature spirit, who was transformed into the goddess of flowers by the god Zephyrus, the west wind. Their union brought about the creation of the flower world, with every blossom that sprang from the earth symbolizing renewal and beauty. While Chloris is more often depicted as a nymph, the connections between her and Flora are undeniable. Both goddesses share the ability to breathe life into the earth, bringing forth flowers, fragrances, and a sense of joy that accompanies the springtime. The story of Flora's legend, however, extends even beyond Greece. In some parts of ancient Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey, Flora was worshipped under various names. The locals believed that Flora had the ability to not only bring about the blooming of flowers, but also to encourage the growth of crops, vital for their agricultural way of life. This connection to agriculture, shared by both the Romans and the Anatolians, highlights Flora's importance as a goddess of both beauty and sustenance. Flora's bloom would signal the beginning of a prosperous harvest season, which was of great importance to ancient societies. The idea of a goddess governing over flowers and the renewal of life is not confined to the Mediterranean world alone. In Norse mythology, a similar role is played by the goddess Idun, keeper of the golden apples of youth. While Idun is more closely associated with the rejuvenation of the gods themselves, her influence on growth, health, and vitality mirrors Flora's connection to the fertility of the earth. Idun's apples are said to keep the gods eternally youthful, much like the returning blooms of Flora preserve the beauty of the earth. Though Idun is not directly related to Flora, the shared theme of renewal and life-giving power suggests a similar place in mythology for both goddesses. In other cultures, Flora's essence appears in the form of spirits and deities that govern the changing of the seasons and the flowering of the earth. For instance, in Celtic traditions, there is a spirit known as the Green Man, a symbol of the flourishing of nature. Though not exactly a goddess, the Green Man represents the vitality of the earth in spring and summer, much like Flora does. He is a symbol of life's persistence through the seasons, reminding people of the cyclical nature of the world. His presence is felt in the thriving foliage and the vibrancy of nature, connecting him to Flora's more widespread symbolism as the bringer of spring. In the Americas, indigenous tribes have their own versions of springtime deities or spirits, many of which share traits with Flora. For example, the Native American Hopi people celebrate the Earth Mother, a spirit who nurtures and protects all life. This deity, like Flora, is closely tied to the fertility of the land and the flowering of plants. While Flora is typically more focused on the beauty and fragrance of flowers, the Earth Mother encompasses a broader role in the growth of crops and the sustenance of the people. Yet, both deities symbolize the fundamental connection between life and nature, underscoring the universal need to honor the forces that nourish the earth. In Hindu mythology, a parallel figure to Flora might be the goddess Lakshmi, often depicted with flowers and linked to prosperity and good fortune. While Lakshmi is primarily known as the goddess of wealth and abundance, she is frequently shown surrounded by flowers, and in many ways, she embodies the abundance that Flora represents in the blooming of nature. Lakshmi's connection to nature's fertility aligns with Flora's role in ensuring the flourishing of crops and flowers. In both belief systems, the act of blooming flowers symbolizes a return of prosperity and vitality, a reminder of the cyclical nature of life and the constant renewal that nature provides. In Japan, where the cherry blossom plays a central cultural role, the significance of flowers and their ephemeral beauty is deeply ingrained in the mythology and traditions. The cherry blossom, or sakura, is a symbol of the fleeting nature of life, much like the flowers that Flora oversees. While not directly related to Flora, the cultural reverence for flowers in Japanese tradition resonates with the goddess's legacy. The sakura blooms for a brief period each year, reminding the people to appreciate the beauty and fragility of life. This shared symbolism of the beauty of fleeting moments ties into Flora's own story. Her blossoms are a reminder that life, while transient, is a source of great joy and renewal. In modern times, Flora's legacy continues in the way people celebrate the natural world and its beauty. The symbolism of flowers, from roses to tulips, lilies to daisies, remains deeply embedded in cultural celebrations, rituals, and even personal expressions. While Flora may have started as a Roman goddess, her essence has permeated cultures across the globe. From the delicate petals of flowers to the vast fields of blooming crops, Flora's influence remains in the very air we breathe, and the plants we see grow each spring, and in the celebrations of life that center around nature's cycles. Flora's legends, far from confined to ancient Rome, resonate across different cultures and eras. Whether through the flowers of Chloris, the harvest of the Earth Mother, or the blossoming spirit of the Green Man, Flora's enduring influence can be seen in the collective reverence for life and renewal. Her beauty, vitality, and connection to nature transcend borders, uniting people through the shared language of growth, spring, and the eternal rhythm of life. As Christianity spread through the Roman Empire, the transition from the old pagan gods and traditions to the new monotheistic faith brought profound changes to the religious landscape. Flora, like many other deities of the Roman pantheon, experienced a decline in worship as the Christian faith took root. However, her essence and symbolism did not vanish entirely. Instead, Flora's connection to nature, fertility, and the cycles of life subtly transitioned into the new Christian narrative, transformed into symbols and practices that blended the old and the new. The shift in religious practice and belief was not an immediate one. For centuries, the Roman people continued to celebrate the gods of the ancient pantheon, and Flora, with her joyful reign over flowers, spring, and fertility, held an important place in the hearts and minds of the people. Her festivals, such as the Floralia, were celebrated with great enthusiasm, honoring her as the goddess of rebirth and renewal. However, as Christianity grew in influence, these pagan rituals came to be seen as incompatible with the teachings of the Church. Christianity, with its rejection of polytheism, gradually overshadowed the traditional worship of gods like Flora. The Church sought to eradicate pagan practices, and many of the old festivals were repurposed or replaced with Christian observances. The Floralia, once a grand celebration of Flora's fertility and beauty, was eventually eclipsed by the Christian Feast of Pentecost, a celebration of the Holy Spirit that falls around the same time of year. In many cases, the joyous festivities dedicated to Flora's reign over nature were rebranded as Christian holidays, a blending of the old pagan customs with the new Christian doctrine. Despite the decline of Flora's formal worship, the goddess's association with the cycles of nature, particularly the springtime renewal of life, found new expression within Christian traditions. In Christian symbolism, the renewal of life, particularly the resurrection of Jesus Christ, became a central theme of the faith. The image of flowers, particularly lilies, became strongly associated with Christian iconography. The lily, a symbol of purity, was often depicted in religious art alongside the Virgin Mary, a figure who, like Flora, embodies both fertility and renewal. Though the religious context had changed, the symbolism of flowers as signs of divine grace and new beginnings remained intact, echoing the influence of Flora's original mythology. The connection between flowers and rebirth found a particularly strong presence during Easter. In the early Christian Church, Easter was a time of celebration, where the death and resurrection of Christ were symbolically mirrored in the blossoming of flowers, especially lilies. This springtime connection to resurrection was no coincidence. As Flora had presided over the blossoming of flowers each spring, so too did Christianity embrace the concept of new life in the season of Christ's resurrection. Flowers became a part of Christian rituals, adorned on altars, presented in churches, and used in processions, as symbols of the beauty and promise of eternal life. Furthermore, Flora's role as a goddess of fertility and abundance was absorbed into the Christian understanding of divine grace and blessings. The idea of a fruitful land, filled with blooming flowers, was echoed in the Christian concept of divine providence, where God's blessings are seen in the abundance of nature. The earth, once the domain of Flora and her floral reign, became an expression of God's creation, filled with life, beauty, and abundance as a reflection of divine will. As Christianity expanded, the old pagan gods like Flora became less and less a focal point of worship. However, Flora's association with nature's rhythms was not entirely erased. Christian beliefs, which sought to reframe the cycles of life and death in spiritual terms, recognized the importance of the natural world as a gift from God. The fertility and flourishing that Flora symbolized continued to resonate within Christianity's emphasis on life's renewal, rebirth, and the beauty of the created world. The Christian understanding of nature, though stripped of its pagan divinity, retained a reverence for the life-giving forces that Flora had once embodied. Some scholars even suggest that Flora's mythology may have influenced the development of Christian saints and the veneration of nature spirits. The transition from a goddess like Flora to the saints of the Christian tradition was a gradual process. Flora's role as a goddess of fertility and the earth's cycles, combined with her nurturing and life-giving attributes, could have easily been folded into the saintly traditions of the Church. Saint Isidore of Seville, for example, became the patron saint of farmers, embodying many of the values once attributed to Flora. In this way, Flora's essence continued to be celebrated, though now through the lens of Christian sanctity. Moreover, in the wider context of the transition to Christianity, Flora, the very plants and flowers Flora had ruled over, became symbols of purity and devotion in Christian art and iconography. The rose, often associated with the Virgin Mary, became a prominent Christian symbol, linked to both love and sacrifice. This symbolism mirrored Flora's ancient connection to flowers as an expression of divine beauty and fertility. The rose's transition into Christian iconography shows how Flora's influence subtly endured, transforming to fit the spiritual framework of Christianity. As the centuries passed, Flora's direct worship faded, but her influence endured in the symbols, festivals, and religious expressions that followed. Christianity, with its emphasis on the resurrection and the promise of eternal life, naturally absorbed many of the themes Flora had once represented. In a sense, the goddess of spring, flowers, and fertility was reincarnated in new forms, her essence still woven into the Christian understanding of life's renewal, the blossoming of faith, and the beauty of divine creation. While the world of Flora may have disappeared from the religious landscape, her spirit remained as a lasting reminder of the divine connection between the earth, nature, and the eternal cycles of life. As Christianity spread throughout Europe, the world of ancient Roman gods and goddesses slowly faded into the background, their myths and symbolism reshaped and reinterpreted within the Christian worldview. Flora, once the celebrated Roman goddess of flowers and spring, was no exception. The Middle Ages, with its deep religious focus and transformation of pagan motifs into Christian symbolism, offered a new lens through which Flora's image was reframed. In the medieval period, nature and its bounty were seen not as the work of many gods and goddesses, but as a direct manifestation of God's creation. The ancient pagan gods like Flora were sidelined, and their attributes were absorbed into the Christian narrative, often stripped of their divine personas. Flora's connection to spring, fertility, and the beauty of flowers, however, did not disappear entirely, rather, her image transformed and adapted to the Christian context. One of the most significant transformations in Flora's representation during medieval Europe was the evolution of her symbolic role. In the classical world, Flora had been celebrated for her control over the natural world, particularly for her role in the blossoming of flowers each spring. In the medieval period, this association with nature's renewal was absorbed into the Christian tradition, where the blooming of flowers was no longer seen as a celebration of a goddess, but rather as a symbol of God's divine creation and the resurrection of Christ. The medieval church often emphasized the connection between nature's cycles and the divine order, with the blooming flowers of spring seen as a reflection of God's grace and the rebirth that came with Christ's resurrection. Flora's role as a goddess of fertility, once tied to pagan rituals and the growth of crops, was reinterpreted in a Christian context as well. During the Middle Ages, fertility was often associated with the Virgin Mary, who was seen as the ultimate symbol of purity and divine motherhood. Flora's nurturing qualities, her care for the earth's growth and fertility, were transferred to the figure of Mary, who was revered for her ability to bring forth new life, both in the spiritual and physical sense. The Virgin Mary became the new figure who nurtured and blessed the earth, transforming Flora's role into a Christian one of maternal care, life, and love. In this way, Flora's influence lived on, albeit under the guise of Christian symbolism. In medieval art, Flora's image was often reinterpreted through the lens of religious symbolism. Flowers, which had once been Flora's domain, continued to be a powerful motif in Christian art. The rose, in particular, took on a prominent role as a symbol of the Virgin Mary, representing both love and sacrifice. Roses were frequently depicted in illuminated manuscripts, stained glass windows, and religious paintings, often in connection with the Virgin or other saints. These flowers, though originally associated with the goddess Flora, were now used to communicate spiritual truths about purity, grace, and divine love. The rose, once a symbol of Flora's fertility and beauty, had transformed into a symbol of the Divine Mother, a figure who, much like Flora, was tied to themes of creation and rebirth. The shift from Flora's pagan worship to Christian symbolism was also reflected in medieval gardens. In the classical world, gardens were often dedicated to gods and goddesses like Flora, but during the Middle Ages, gardens became more closely associated with religious symbolism and the cultivation of holiness. Monastic gardens, in particular, were carefully designed to reflect the divine order and to cultivate plants with medicinal or symbolic value. Though the celebration of Flora as a deity faded, the practice of cultivating beautiful flowers, particularly those with religious symbolism, continued. The garden, once a sacred space for Flora's presence, was now a space where Christian themes of paradise, redemption, and divine creation were explored. Even the layout of these gardens, with their geometric patterns and ordered arrangement, reflected a sense of divine harmony, drawing from the same appreciation of natural beauty that Flora had once represented. Medieval interpretations of Flora were also shaped by the rise of allegorical literature. During the Middle Ages, works like the Roman de la Rose, the Romance of the Rose, and other allegorical poems explored the symbolism of flowers, with many of them incorporating Flora's essence into Christian frameworks. In these works, the rose often symbolized the Virgin Mary, while other flowers represented various virtues or spiritual truths. Flora, though not directly invoked in these works, lived on in the symbolic language of flowers, which were used to convey moral and spiritual lessons. The association between flowers and divine love, purity, and resurrection drew from Flora's original symbolism but was now expressed through Christian allegory. In medieval religious festivals, remnants of Flora's influence lingered in the form of celebrations of spring and nature's renewal. Although the Floralia, the Roman festival dedicated to Flora, had long since faded, the themes of rebirth and fertility continued to resonate. The medieval church, while seeking to replace pagan practices, often appropriated existing cultural traditions. The May Day celebrations, which marked the arrival of spring, continued in some regions and became intertwined with Christian observances, such as the Feast of the Ascension. The rituals of dancing around the maypole, a practice linked to the worship of fertility gods, were incorporated into Christian celebrations of the Virgin Mary and the renewal of life. In this way, Flora's connection to springtime and the blossoming of flowers remained part of the seasonal rhythms of the Christian liturgical calendar, though now framed in a new religious context. In some cases, Flora's image was even reinterpreted through the lens of the saints. Some medieval saints were associated with fertility, nature, and the care of the earth, echoing the qualities that Flora had once embodied. Saint Isidore of Seville, for example, became the patron saint of farmers, a role that echoed Flora's nurturing of the earth's fertility. Similarly, other saints associated with agriculture and nature became the new protectors of the land, carrying forward Flora's legacy in a Christianized form. Though Flora was no longer worshipped as a deity in medieval Europe, her influence continued to be felt through the symbolic language of flowers, the transformation of her attributes into Christian virtues, and the ongoing celebration of nature's cycles and Christian rituals. Flora's association with fertility, beauty, and rebirth was reinterpreted within the context of Christianity, where her essence lived on in the symbols, traditions, and artistic representations that shaped medieval religious life. Through this transformation, Flora's enduring influence can still be seen in the way flowers continue to symbolize life, love, and divine beauty in the Christian tradition. The Renaissance was a period of profound transformation in Europe, where the revival of classical ideas and the rediscovery of ancient texts brought about a cultural awakening. It was a time of artistic, philosophical, and scientific exploration, a rebirth of knowledge that sought to bridge the gap between the classical past and the emerging modern world. In this context, Flora, the Roman goddess of flowers and spring, experienced a resurgence in both symbolism and artistic representation, but her image was transformed in intriguing ways that reflected the changing spirit of the time. The Renaissance was deeply rooted in the classical world. Scholars and artists sought inspiration from ancient Greece and Rome, reviving the ideals of beauty, harmony, and nature that had flourished in those civilizations. The rediscovery of ancient texts, including works on mythology, philosophy, and science, revived interest in the gods and goddesses of the classical pantheon. Flora, as the goddess of flowers, fertility, and spring, found her way back into the cultural consciousness of the Renaissance, but her role shifted subtly in response to the evolving intellectual and religious landscape. One of the most significant ways Flora's image was reinterpreted during the Renaissance was through art. The Renaissance saw the blossoming of new artistic techniques, and artists like Sandro Botticelli, Leonardo da Vinci, and Raphael began to experiment with naturalism and humanist themes. Flora, once a symbol of fertility and the wild, was now portrayed with a more refined, idealized form. No longer just a goddess of untamed nature, she became a symbol of beauty, grace, and order. Artists painted her as a goddess who represented the idealized beauty of nature, an embodiment of spring's renewal, and the divine order of creation. Botticelli's famous painting Primavera is perhaps the most iconic Renaissance depiction of Flora. In this work, Flora stands at the center, surrounded by other mythological figures that symbolize different aspects of spring. The painting captures her as an ethereal, almost divine figure, gracefully scattering flowers across the canvas, symbolizing the fertility and growth that spring brings. This image of Flora was a product of Renaissance humanism, where beauty and nature were seen as divine reflections of God's creation, not merely as the work of a pagan goddess. Botticelli's Flora embodies the harmony between human ideals of beauty and the natural world, a central theme of Renaissance art. Flora's connection to the natural world also resonated with the Renaissance fascination with botany and the study of plants. The period saw the development of scientific methods of observation and classification, and plants became subjects of intense interest for naturalists and scholars. Flora, as the goddess of flowers, symbolized the ever-renewing power of nature, a fitting representation for an era that sought to understand the natural world in greater detail. Gardens, once a place of symbolic ritual, were transformed into sites of scientific exploration, where the study of plants became a serious pursuit. Flora, now not just a goddess, but a figure associated with the careful study and cultivation of nature, represented both the beauty and the potential of the natural world. The Renaissance also saw a resurgence of interest in mythology, particularly in the works of poets like Ovid, whose metamorphoses offered rich stories about the gods and goddesses of ancient Rome. Flora was often mentioned in these texts, and Renaissance poets, artists, and scholars revisited her stories, reinterpreting them in the light of Renaissance humanism. She became a symbol of the rebirth of knowledge, embodying the hope and renewal that came with the intellectual and cultural revival of the Renaissance. Just as flowers bloom in the spring, so too did knowledge and creativity blossom during this era, and Flora was seen as a reflection of this vitality. However, the Renaissance was not without its tensions between the old pagan world and the emerging Christian ethos. While the classical revival brought many of the gods and goddesses back into the fold, it also had to contend with the dominance of Christianity. Flora's image, like many other pagan deities, was sometimes downplayed or subtly shifted to fit within Christian interpretations. While the goddess was celebrated in artistic and intellectual circles, there was always the awareness that she was part of a mythological tradition that had been superseded by Christian teachings. As such, Flora was often portrayed as a more neutral figure, associated with nature's beauty and fertility but stripped of the more pagan aspects of her mythology. Flora's transformation during the Renaissance also mirrored the changing role of women in society. In classical mythology, Flora was often depicted as a powerful, autonomous deity who controlled the growth of flowers and the fertility of the earth. During the Renaissance, however, women were more often seen through the lens of domesticity and motherhood, and Flora's representation as a nurturing, gentle figure reflected this idealized view of femininity. Renaissance portrayals of Flora often highlighted her beauty and grace, connecting her more closely to the ideal of the Virgin Mary, whose own symbolism was heavily tied to the purity and fertility of the earth. This shift reflected the broader cultural trends of the time, where femininity was celebrated for its nurturing qualities but was also often confined to more traditional roles within society. Despite the Christian undertones of Renaissance thought, Flora's mythological legacy was not erased. Her figure continued to inspire poets, artists, and thinkers, many of whom sought to reconcile the ancient pagan world with the emerging Christian humanism of the period. Flora was depicted as a figure of both beauty and wisdom, embodying the divine forces of nature that were seen as part of God's grand design. The Renaissance fascination with classical antiquity, combined with the period's burgeoning interest in science and naturalism, allowed Flora to endure as a symbol of the relationship between humanity and the natural world, a bridge between the mythological past and the intellectual present. Flora's role in the Renaissance was not just that of a goddess to be worshipped or a figure to be studied. She became a symbol of the Renaissance's ideals of beauty, knowledge, and the harmonious relationship between humans and the natural world. Her image was reinterpreted, reshaped, and celebrated in art, poetry, and science, all while navigating the complex interplay between pagan mythology and Christian doctrine. Through these transformations, Flora continued to live on in the heart of the Renaissance, an enduring symbol of the eternal cycles of nature and the promise of renewal. The Enlightenment was a time of intellectual awakening, marked by a celebration of reason, science, and progress. Amid this period of rational thought, the arts and literature were infused with a renewed interest in classical mythology, human nature, and the natural world. Flora, the Roman goddess of flowers and spring, became an emblem of the interconnectedness between nature and humanity during this time. Her image, already refined during the Renaissance, underwent further transformation, aligning with the values of the Enlightenment, where reason and natural beauty were seen as intertwined forces. In the Enlightenment, Flora's symbolism was amplified by the growing influence of botanical studies and the fascination with the natural world. This era saw the emergence of rigorous scientific exploration, with scholars systematically cataloging plant species, examining ecosystems, and understanding the processes of growth and renewal. Flora, the goddess of flowers, naturally fit into this expanding view of nature, representing the beauty, order, and balance that characterized the scientific approach to the world. Yet, she also embodied the mystical aspects of nature, where human emotions and the natural environment intersected in profound ways. Artists and writers began to explore both the scientific and spiritual elements of the world through Flora, blending her ancient associations with the evolving philosophical landscape. In the world of art, Flora continued to serve as a muse, but with a new emphasis on symmetry, harmony, and idealized beauty. Enlightenment-era artists, influenced by the neoclassical movement, sought to depict nature as a perfect, rational entity, reflecting the Enlightenment ideals of order and harmony. Flora was often portrayed as the epitome of nature's beauty, graceful, composed, and serene. Her representation in these works was typically rooted in a calm, ordered world, where flowers bloomed in perfect symmetry, embodying nature's balance as understood by the new scientific thinking. Yet, beneath this tranquil facade lay a more profound, spiritual connection to the earth, suggesting that the forces of nature were not only rational but also transcendent. One of the most striking examples of Flora in Enlightenment art can be found in the works of French artist François Boucher, who often depicted Flora in delicate, Rococo-style paintings. His works were steeped in a sense of lightness and elegance, and Flora, portrayed as an idealized figure, fit perfectly into his romanticized view of nature. In Boucher's paintings, Flora was not just a goddess of flowers but a symbol of the luxurious beauty of the natural world, evoking the warmth and gentleness of spring. Her figure was often surrounded by blooming flowers, soft pastels, and an overall sense of harmony, reflecting both the refined tastes of the era and the belief that beauty in nature was an expression of divine order. Flora's role in art extended beyond her symbolic presence in paintings. She became an object of fascination for botanical artists, whose work flourished during the Enlightenment. The study of plants was no longer just about their aesthetic qualities, but also their scientific and medicinal properties. Artists like George Dionysius Ehret and Pierre-Joseph Redoute produced botanical illustrations that showcased the meticulous study of flowers, rendering them in vibrant detail. While Flora was not the subject of these works in the traditional sense, she symbolized the spirit of these botanical artists, who sought to capture the full range of nature's diversity, beauty, and utility. Through Flora, the Enlightenment's reverence for nature's perfection was expressed in both the idealized and the scientific, showcasing how the era bridged the gap between art and knowledge. In literature, Flora's presence was often used to explore themes of renewal, transformation, and the passage of time. The Enlightenment thinkers, who valued reason and rationality, found in Flora a symbol of the cyclical nature of life and the eternal rhythms of the natural world. Her association with spring and growth made her a fitting metaphor for the intellectual awakening of the period, as thinkers sought to spring forth new ideas, challenging old beliefs and hierarchies. Poets like Alexander Pope and Voltaire, who were heavily influenced by the Enlightenment's focus on nature and human progress, incorporated flora and floral imagery in their works, often using her as a symbol of both beauty and the power of renewal. In Pope's The Rape of the Lock, for example, flowers and nature take on a dual meaning, representing both the ideals of beauty and the destructive tendencies of human vanity. While Flora does not explicitly appear as a character, the poem's lush depictions of nature and beauty evoke her spirit, suggesting that nature's beauty, much like the flowers themselves, can be fleeting and subject to human folly. Similarly, Voltaire's Candide, with its satirical treatment of human nature, uses flowers and natural imagery to question the optimism of the era, particularly through the contrast between the idealized beauty of Flora and the harsh realities of the world. The Enlightenment also saw the rise of the botanical garden as a space for both scientific study and aesthetic enjoyment. These gardens were meticulously designed, with carefully arranged plants and flowers that showcased the latest botanical discoveries. Flora was a frequent muse for these spaces, where her association with fertility and growth took on a more practical, scientific significance. The gardens became living representations of nature's beauty, order, and utility, echoing the Enlightenment's ideals of rationality and progress. Flora, as the goddess who presided over flowers and the flourishing of life, was the perfect figure to embody the harmonious relationship between art, science, and nature in these gardens. However, the Enlightenment was not just about reason and order, it was also a period of questioning and challenge to traditional norms, including those surrounding nature and femininity. Flora, as a goddess who personified the beauty and fertility of the earth, was sometimes reinterpreted as a symbol of the power and complexity of femininity. She was a figure who was both gentle and powerful, nurturing yet independent, a reflection of the changing attitudes toward women in Enlightenment society. While Flora's image remained one of grace and beauty, her symbolic power also began to be seen as a reflection of the potential for transformation and renewal in all aspects of life, whether in nature, in society, or in the self. In the end, Flora's presence in the Enlightenment was not just a return to the past, but a reflection of the era's desire to blend reason with imagination, science with art, and order with beauty. Flora symbolized the idealized version of nature that was embraced by the Enlightenment, a perfect balance of growth, renewal, and transformation. Through art, literature, and scientific study, her image continued to evolve, blending the rational with the mystical, the scientific with the divine, and the classical with the modern. As both a symbol of nature's beauty and the intellectual progress of the Enlightenment, Flora stood as a timeless figure who bridged the ancient and modern worlds, embodying the spirit of renewal that defined the age. The Victorian era, a period defined by rapid scientific advancements, cultural shifts, and a deep fascination with nature, saw Flora, the Roman goddess of flowers and spring, take on new significance. As the Industrial Revolution transformed the world, the Victorians found solace and inspiration in the natural world, with flowers and plants becoming emblematic of the age's values of beauty, growth, and the complexity of life. Flora, the goddess who represented the delicate beauty and power of the natural world, resonated deeply with the Victorians, who were not only captivated by the aesthetic appeal of flowers, but also by their scientific properties. During the Victorian period, botanical studies reached unprecedented heights. The expansion of botanical gardens, the development of plant classification systems, and the rise of plant exploration were all central to this era. The Victorian obsession with cataloging the natural world was propelled by the work of pioneering botanists like Joseph Hooker and the immense popularity of plant-based publications such as the Floral World and the Gardener's Chronicle. These botanical texts, which featured detailed descriptions and stunning illustrations of flowers, further cemented flora's role as a symbol of nature's wonder and mystery. In this period, Flora was not merely a mythological figure. She became intertwined with the Victorian obsession with cataloging and understanding the natural world. Flowers were no longer just seen as beautiful objects to be admired, but as subjects of intense scientific inquiry. The Victorians viewed Flora as both a symbol of the untamed and unknown and as an emblem of a cultivated, ordered world. Her role as a goddess of fertility and spring aligned perfectly with the era's fascination with growth, renewal, and the intricate systems of life. One of the most significant ways Flora's influence manifested in Victorian botany was through the development of flower language, also known as floriography. During the Victorian era, flowers were given specific meanings, often serving as a covert form of communication. Flora, as the goddess who presided over flowers, was seen as the perfect figure to represent this complex system of symbolism. The Victorians believed that flowers could convey emotions, messages, and desires that words could not express. A bouquet of roses, for example, might symbolize love, while chrysanthemums could convey grief. The language of flowers, based on the meanings attributed to different species, allowed Victorians to communicate their feelings in a way that was often more eloquent than speech. This practice was influenced by both the classical legacy of Flora and the era's burgeoning interest in the symbolism of nature. Flora's association with the renewal of life and the natural cycles of growth was reflected in the messages encoded within flower arrangements. The Victorians believed that flowers, like Flora herself, held the key to understanding the emotional and spiritual realms of life. Through floriography, Flora became a central figure in romantic and social exchanges, with flowers serving as both personal tokens and powerful symbols of human connection. The Victorian era was also a time of great scientific discovery in the field of botany. Charles Darwin's groundbreaking work on evolution, published in On the Origin of Species in 1859, had a profound impact on the way people understood plants and their place in the natural world. The study of flowers and their reproductive processes became central to the scientific understanding of life on Earth. Botanists began to examine flowers not just for their aesthetic qualities, but also for their biological functions, contributing to a deeper understanding of the relationship between plants and the environment. Flora's influence in this context was twofold. On one hand, she represented the beauty and allure of the natural world, which inspired botanists and scientists to study plants in greater detail. On the other hand, Flora's association with fertility and reproduction made her an apt symbol for the scientific exploration of plant life. The study of flowers' ability to bloom, reproduce, and sustain life echoed the mythological symbolism of Flora as a goddess who governed the rhythms of growth and renewal. Flora became not only a goddess of beauty but also a goddess of the intricate processes that sustain life itself. Botanical illustrations were another crucial aspect of Victorian botany, and Flora's image was often depicted in these works, symbolizing the elegance and sophistication of the natural world. The exquisite floral paintings of artists like Marianne North and Redoute were not merely representations of flowers, they were scientific studies that captured the complexity of plant life with stunning precision. These botanical illustrations served as both artistic expressions and educational tools, with Flora symbolizing the interconnectedness of art, science, and nature. In Victorian gardens, Flora was more than just a symbol, she was a guiding force. The gardens of the time reflected the era's obsession with order, classification, and cultivation. Flora, the goddess of spring and new growth, was often invoked as a symbol of the season's vitality, and gardens became spaces where Victorians could connect with both the beauty and the science of nature. The meticulously curated flower beds, filled with roses, lilies, and daisies, were designed to showcase the Victorians' understanding of plant life. These gardens became places of both personal reflection and scientific exploration, where Flora's influence could be felt in every bloom. The Victorian fascination with flowers also extended to the social sphere. Floral motifs were pervasive in fashion, interior design, and even everyday items. Flora's presence was felt in the delicate lacework of a Victorian dress, in the floral wallpaper adorning the walls of a home, and in the bouquets exchanged between lovers and friends. The Victorians saw Flora as a symbol of femininity, beauty, and grace, qualities that were highly valued in their culture. Flowers, and by extension Flora, became inextricably linked to notions of refinement, purity, and moral virtue. Yet Flora's symbolism also had a darker side in the Victorian era. While flowers were associated with beauty, they were also reminders of life's fragility. The fleeting nature of a flower's bloom mirrored the ephemeral nature of human existence. Flowers were often used to mark occasions of mourning, with arrangements placed on graves or offered to the recently deceased. Flora's role as a goddess of renewal took on a poignant meaning, reminding Victorians of the cyclical nature of life and death. The Victorians, with their deep sensitivity to the passage of time, often saw in Flora a symbol not only of life's beauty but also of its impermanence. In the realm of literature, Flora was an enduring presence in Victorian poetry and prose. The works of poets like Christina Rossetti and Alfred, Lord Tennyson, often invoked floral imagery to express themes of love, loss, and the passage of time. Flowers, like Flora, became symbols of the human condition, serving as metaphors for both the joys and sorrows of life. In Rossetti's poem The Garden of Proserpine, for example, flowers represent the transient beauty of life, contrasting the lush blooms of the garden with the inevitability of death. Flora's mythological role as a goddess of life and death was reflected in the Victorians' complex relationship with flowers, which embodied both the vitality of life and the sadness of loss. In sum, Flora's role in Victorian botany was multifaceted, blending the scientific and the spiritual, the aesthetic and the practical. She embodied the era's reverence for the natural world, from the scientific study of plants to the symbolic language of flowers. Flora's image, rooted in classical mythology, was reinterpreted in the context of the Victorian era, where she symbolized both the beauty and fragility of life. In botany, art, and literature, Flora remained a timeless figure, a reminder of nature's power to both inspire and humble humanity. In the quiet of the modern world, amidst the cacophony of technology and industrialization, there has been a resurgence, a return to ancient practices, a rediscovery of old gods and goddesses, and a rekindling of the earth's ancient rhythms. Among these deities, Flora, the Roman goddess of flowers and spring, has emerged as a figure of profound significance in contemporary paganism. As the earth calls back to her natural cycles, Flora has found her place once again in the hearts and rituals of those who seek to honor the land, its beauty, and its transformative power. Modern paganism, with its wide variety of traditions, Wicca, Druidry, Heat-Henry, and others, has always been rooted in a deep reverence for nature. The cycles of the seasons, the changing of the moons, and the blossoming of flowers are central to these practices. Flora, as the embodiment of spring and fertility, has come to represent the very essence of life, growth, and renewal in these spiritual paths. She is not just a goddess of flowers, she is a symbol of the earth's endless ability to regenerate, to heal, and to flourish. For pagans, the arrival of spring is a sacred time. It marks a period of rebirth, the moment when the earth sheds its winter slumber and awakens to the warmth and light of the sun. Flora, as the goddess who governs this season, is seen as the key to unlocking the earth's power to blossom. Rituals dedicated to Flora often coincide with the spring equinox, a moment of balance when day and night are equal, symbolizing harmony and new beginnings. For modern pagans, Flora represents not only the physical renewal of the earth, but also the personal and spiritual renewal that comes with the changing seasons. The connection between Flora and modern paganism is particularly strong in practices that emphasize the sacredness of the earth and the cycles of nature. For Wiccans, the goddess Flora is often invoked in rituals to celebrate the coming of spring, the planting of seeds, and the nurturing of new life. Offerings of flowers, herbs, and other plant-based gifts are made to honor Flora, invoking her blessings for fertility, growth, and abundance. These rituals are not just acts of reverence for Flora herself, but also for the earth as a living, breathing entity that sustains and nurtures all life. Flora's image as a nurturing and life-giving goddess has made her a natural figure in fertility rites. For many pagans, the celebration of fertility is not just about the reproduction of humans, but about the fertility of the land, the cycles of the seasons, and the interconnectedness of all living things. Flora's role as a goddess of flowers and plants ties her to these fertility rituals, with flowers representing the blossoming of life itself. The planting of seeds, the tending of gardens, and the harvesting of crops are seen as sacred acts that honor Flora's influence on the earth. In contemporary Druidry, a tradition deeply tied to the cycles of nature and the reverence of trees, plants, and flowers, Flora holds a significant place. Druids often celebrate the changing of the seasons with rituals that honor the deities associated with each time of year. Flora, as the goddess of spring, is called upon to bless the land with the vibrant colors of new life. The blooming of flowers is seen as a direct manifestation of Flora's power, and Druids often perform rituals at sacred groves or natural sites to honor her and the earth's seasonal transitions. In some pagan circles, Flora is also associated with the idea of Earth's healing power. Many modern pagans see Flora as a goddess who can bring balance and healing not only to the land, but also to individuals. Flowers, with their delicate beauty and medicinal properties, are seen as symbols of transformation and rejuvenation. Flora is invoked in healing rituals, where her name is spoken in prayers for personal or collective healing. The act of creating flower essences, an ancient practice that involves capturing the energy of flowers to promote physical, emotional, and spiritual healing, is another way in which modern pagans channel Flora's powers. Beyond fertility and healing, Flora represents the balance between destruction and creation. Just as flowers bloom and wither in their natural cycle, Flora embodies the truth that all things are born, grow, and eventually return to the earth. This cyclical nature is central to many pagan beliefs, especially in the context of life, death, and rebirth. Flora's mythology, of a goddess who rules over the seasons and is tied to the constant regeneration of life, mirrors the cycles of the moon, the growth of plants, and the eternal ebb and flow of time. For modern pagans, Flora is not only a goddess of life's vibrancy but also a reminder of life's impermanence and the wisdom that comes with accepting both the birth and the end of things. As the natural world faces unprecedented challenges, climate change, deforestation, and the loss of biodiversity, many modern pagans see Flora's resurgence as a call to reconnect with nature and take action to protect it. In honoring Flora, they also honor the earth and its fragile ecosystems. Pagans today are often involved in environmental activism, advocating for sustainability, conservation, and the protection of sacred lands. Flora, in this context, is not just a figure to be worshipped in ritual but also a symbol of the urgent need to heal and restore the earth. In some pagan communities, Flora has been reinterpreted as a goddess of inclusivity, of embracing all aspects of life's diversity. Just as flowers bloom in a multitude of shapes, colors, and scents, Flora symbolizes the acceptance of all forms of beauty and life. Her modern worship is often characterized by a celebration of individuality, the honoring of different sexualities and gender identities, and the fostering of acceptance and love in all its forms. Flora is seen as a goddess who welcomes all people, just as flowers bloom freely in nature, unrestricted by boundaries. The resurgence of Flora in contemporary paganism is a reminder of the timeless connection between humanity and the earth. As people gather in circles of light, chanting the old names and calling upon the goddess of flowers and spring, they are not just honoring a mythic figure but also re-establishing a deep, spiritual relationship with the natural world. Flora's return to the modern pagan consciousness is a call to rediscover the ancient rhythms of life, to celebrate growth and renewal, and to protect the sacred earth that sustains us all. Flora, the ancient Roman goddess of flowers and spring, has left an indelible mark on the world of modern art and literature. Her presence, both as a symbol and a character, is woven into the fabric of contemporary storytelling and visual expression. In novels, films, and visual art, Flora's image and influence appear in countless ways, capturing the spirit of renewal, beauty, and the transformative power of nature. From the pages of fantasy literature to the frames of contemporary films, Flora continues to inspire artists and writers who look to the past for inspiration and reinterpret it for the present. In modern literature, Flora often emerges as a symbol of fertility, renewal, and the natural world's enduring power. Many modern authors incorporate her myth into their works, either directly or indirectly, using her as a metaphor for growth, transformation, or the cyclical nature of life. Her image as a goddess who governs flowers and spring often resonates in stories that deal with themes of rebirth or the rejuvenation of both the land and individuals. Writers of fantasy, magical realism, and even contemporary fiction have drawn upon Flora's connection to the seasons to frame narratives that explore the passage of time and the resilience of the natural world. One striking example of Flora's presence in modern literature is found in works that delve into themes of ecological consciousness and the human relationship with nature. Authors who are concerned with environmental issues often personify Flora, turning her into an allegorical figure representing the Earth's struggle against destruction and neglect. In these stories, Flora may not always appear as a literal goddess, but her essence, the regenerative power of nature, is a central force. Flora embodies the healing potential of nature, showing how life can return, even in the face of environmental damage, if only humanity learns to live in harmony with the Earth. Flora's role is also explored in works of fiction where she appears as a literal or metaphorical character in the narrative. In many of these stories, she is depicted as a force of nature who has the power to influence human lives. In some, she may be a character who brings growth, life, and beauty to barren or troubled lands, symbolizing hope and the promise of better days. These interpretations often emphasize Flora's connection to both the land and humanity, making her an essential part of the narrative's emotional heart. Her presence often heralds a time of change, transformation, and healing, and her story intertwines with that of the human characters, serving as a reminder of the fragility and resilience of life. In film, Flora's influence can be seen in the visual depiction of nature's cycles and the themes of rejuvenation, fertility, and the beauty of the natural world. Directors and cinematographers who work with imagery of the seasons often draw on Flora's associations with spring and rebirth. She may not always appear as a literal character, but can be inferred through the blossoming of flowers, the blooming of trees, and the lush landscapes that fill the screen. Flora's symbolism, with its deep connection to nature's cycles, is a perfect fit for stories that deal with personal or collective rebirth, transformation, or healing. Films that explore themes of nature, mythology, and the divine often incorporate Flora's essence, using the language of flowers and the imagery of spring to evoke deep emotional responses. In these films, Flora is often portrayed as a mysterious and powerful figure, one whose influence can be felt in the blossoming of the land and the changes that take place in the lives of the characters. Her connection to fertility and growth is underscored by the scenes of gardens, fields, and forests, where nature itself seems to be alive with the goddess's presence. These films, often steeped in magical realism or fantasy, take the ancient myth of Flora and reinterpret it, making it relevant to modern audiences who still long for a connection to the natural world. The world of visual art is where Flora's influence is perhaps most immediately recognizable. Artists have long drawn inspiration from the goddess and her association with flowers, spring, and the natural world. In modern art, Flora's image is reinterpreted in countless ways, from traditional portraiture to abstract representations of nature's power and beauty. The goddess herself is often depicted in lush, vibrant colors, surrounded by flowers, leaves, and blossoms that symbolize life's abundance. These works capture the essence of Flora's myth, her nurturing and life-giving presence, through bold and striking visual representations. In contemporary art, Flora's symbolism is sometimes abstracted, with flowers and plant life becoming metaphors for growth, change, and the passage of time. Artists use Flora's associations with renewal to explore themes of personal transformation, the cycle of life, and the ways in which nature reflects the human experience. Her influence can be seen in works that focus on the fragility of life, the resilience of nature, and the ways in which flowers and plants embody both beauty and impermanence. These artworks, which often blur the line between nature and the divine, invite viewers to consider their own relationship with the natural world and the ways in which they, too, are a part of the ongoing cycle of life and death. The influence of flora in modern art and literature also extends into the world of fashion and design. Designers often turn to flora's associations with flowers, beauty, and femininity, incorporating floral patterns and motifs into clothing, accessories, and interior design. Flora's image as a goddess of fertility and abundance is often mirrored in the lavishness of floral designs, which evoke the richness of the earth's bounty. Whether in high fashion or everyday style, flora's essence is captured through the delicate beauty of flowers and the vibrant colors that symbolize life and growth. The resurgence of interest in flora in modern art and literature is a testament to the enduring power of mythology and its ability to adapt to the changing times. Her story continues to resonate with people who seek to reconnect with nature, with the cycles of life, and with the transformative potential of beauty and growth. As art and literature evolve, flora's role as a goddess of renewal, fertility, and the blossoming of life remains a potent symbol, one that continues to inspire creativity, reflection, and connection to the natural world. From the pages of novels to the frames of films and the canvases of contemporary artists, Flora remains a central figure in the modern artistic landscape. She represents the eternal cycles of nature, the beauty of life, and the promise of transformation. In her, the ancient and the modern meet, creating a bridge between the past and the present, where the goddess of spring continues to bloom in the hearts and minds of artists, writers, and dreamers alike. Flora's mythology, with its deep connection to the cycles of nature, renewal, and growth, resonates profoundly with modern environmental movements. The Roman goddess of flowers and spring, who symbolizes the vitality and beauty of the natural world, serves as a powerful metaphor for the planet's fragility and resilience. In today's world, where environmental degradation, climate change, and ecological destruction are pressing concerns, Flora's ancient story has found a new voice, inspiring individuals and organizations dedicated to preserving the earth and its ecosystems. Flora's myth speaks to the core of what environmental movements advocate, the need to nurture and protect the natural world. As a goddess who governs flowers, spring, and fertility, Flora embodies the idea that nature's regenerative power is essential for life. Her ability to bring forth life through blooming flowers and flourishing plants mirrors the regenerative processes that environmentalists seek to foster, whether through reforestation efforts, sustainable agriculture, or the protection of endangered species. In her myth, Flora's influence over growth and transformation reflects a deep respect for the Earth's ecosystems and the interdependence of all living things, a message that is central to modern environmentalism. The symbolism of Flora extends far beyond her role as a goddess of beauty and fertility. She is a symbol of balance and harmony within nature. In a time when humanity is grappling with the consequences of industrialization, deforestation, pollution, and climate change, Flora's mythology offers a poignant reminder of the interconnectedness of all life. The goddess' association with the Earth's cycles, particularly the cycles of growth, death, and rebirth, speaks to the need for ecological balance. It serves as a call to action to protect the delicate web of life that sustains the planet. Just as flowers depend on healthy soil, sunlight, and water to thrive, so too does all life on Earth depend on a balanced and healthy environment. Flora's influence is particularly evident in the way modern environmental movements emphasize the importance of biodiversity. Flowers, as her domain, are often seen as a symbol of the diversity of life on Earth, each bloom unique, yet all interdependent. Just as the wide variety of flowers creates a vibrant and thriving ecosystem, so too does biodiversity contribute to a healthy planet. Environmentalists, inspired by Flora's legacy, work tirelessly to protect ecosystems that support a wide range of species, from the smallest insects to the tallest trees. They advocate for the preservation of habitats that foster this diversity, from rainforests to coral reefs, and emphasize the importance of conserving the delicate balance that Flora represents in her myth. Flora's mythology also speaks to the idea of stewardship and responsibility. In Roman culture, Flora was revered not just as a goddess, but as a force that required care and respect. The Floralia, the festival dedicated to her, was a time of celebration and gratitude for the abundance of nature, but also a reminder of the duty humans have to care for the land. In modern environmentalism, this idea of stewardship has become a core principle. Environmental movements call for individuals, communities, and governments to take responsibility for the health of the planet, advocating for sustainable practices, renewable energy, waste reduction, and the protection of natural resources. Flora's influence reminds us that we are not separate from nature, but a part of it, and that our actions have lasting consequences on the environment. The goddess's association with spring, her ability to bring forth new life after the cold, harsh winter, also holds significant meaning for environmental movements that focus on regeneration and recovery. As flora breathes life into the earth, so too do modern efforts seek to restore damaged ecosystems. Reforestation projects, soil regeneration techniques, and the reclamation of polluted lands are contemporary forms of the rebirth that flora symbolizes. Her mythology speaks to the power of renewal and the hope that, even in the face of environmental challenges, recovery is possible. This message is a driving force behind the environmental movements that work to undo the damage caused by human activity and to restore the earth to a healthier state. Flora's influence can also be seen in the growing emphasis on ecological sustainability in agriculture and food production. Her role as a goddess of fertility and plant life has made her a figurehead for movements that promote organic farming, permaculture, and agroecology, practices that work in harmony with nature rather than against it. The values that flora represents, nurturing, growth, and respect for the natural world, align closely with the principles of sustainable agriculture, which seeks to produce food in ways that preserve soil health, conserve water, and minimize harm to the environment. By drawing inspiration from Flora's mythology, these movements seek to create food systems that are as harmonious and life-giving as the goddess herself. In addition to influencing ecological practices, Flora's story has inspired environmental activism in more subtle, cultural ways. The goddess is often depicted as an embodiment of nature's beauty and power, which environmentalists use as a rallying cry to protect the things that are at risk of being lost. Her association with flowers and natural beauty reminds people of the intrinsic value of the earth, not just for the resources it provides, but for the beauty that it holds. Flora's myth encourages us to appreciate the world around us, to see the beauty in a blooming flower or a thriving forest, and to understand that these are not things to be taken for granted. By invoking flora, environmentalists are able to call attention to the aesthetic and spiritual value of the natural world, inspiring a deeper connection to the land and a greater sense of urgency in its protection. Flora's myth has also found a place in modern rituals and celebrations that focus on environmental causes. In paganism and contemporary earth-based spiritual practices, Flora is often invoked during spring equinox ceremonies and rituals dedicated to the earth's renewal. These rituals, rooted in ancient traditions, draw on the symbolism of Flora's fertility and life-giving energy to celebrate the earth's capacity for growth and transformation. Through these practices, modern environmentalists and spiritual seekers alike are reminded of their role in nurturing and protecting the planet. As Flora's story continues to inspire modern environmental movements, her mythology serves as a powerful reminder that the earth is not simply a resource to be exploited, but a living, breathing entity that requires care, respect, and attention. Her influence is felt in the global efforts to protect the environment, restore damaged ecosystems, and foster a deeper connection to the natural world. Flora's mythology encourages us to see the beauty in the earth, to understand our interconnectedness with nature, and to take action to preserve the delicate balance that sustains life. In her, we find not just a goddess of flowers, but a symbol of hope, renewal, and the transformative power of nature. Flowers have always carried an undeniable magic, their delicate petals speaking a language that transcends time, culture, and geography. From the moment they bloom, they become more than just plants. They are living symbols of beauty, life, and renewal. In every society, flowers have been revered, celebrated, and woven into the very fabric of human experience, representing everything from love and hope to mortality and memory. At the heart of a flower is its simplicity and elegance, qualities that make it both universally understood and deeply meaningful. The sight of a flower in full bloom can evoke a range of emotions, from joy to sadness, wonder to nostalgia. It is no wonder that, throughout history, flowers have been used as symbols in art, literature, and religion. Their brief but beautiful existence reminds us of the fragility of life and the fleeting nature of time. Yet, despite their transient nature, flowers also represent renewal, the promise of a new season, a new beginning, or a fresh start. This duality of beauty and impermanence makes flowers powerful symbols, capable of conveying complex emotions and ideas with just a glance. The symbolism of flowers is perhaps most vividly expressed in the concept of renewal. In many cultures, flowers are tied to the changing of the seasons, particularly the arrival of spring. After the cold, dark winter, flowers burst forth from the soil, signaling the return of warmth and growth. This renewal is not just physical, it is spiritual, emotional, and even psychological. Flowers represent the cyclical nature of life. Death and decay give way to new life, and from the darkness, light emerges once more. Whether it's the first crocus of the season peeking through the snow or the vibrant blossoms of a cherry tree in full bloom, flowers serve as a powerful reminder of the regenerative forces at work in the world around us. The symbolism of flowers also speaks to the universality of life and love. A single rose can carry within it a universe of meaning, love, passion, beauty, and longing. Throughout history, flowers have been used to express emotions that words cannot fully capture. In the Victorian era, the language of flowers, or floriography, became a popular means of communication, where different flowers conveyed specific messages. A red rose was a declaration of love, while a white lily symbolized purity and innocence. Each bloom, with its color, shape, and scent, was imbued with meaning that allowed people to express their deepest feelings in a subtle yet powerful way. In this sense, flowers are not just symbols of beauty, they are conduits for emotions, for human connection, and for the silent communication that transcends the spoken word. Yet, flowers are not only symbols of life and beauty, they also represent the inevitability of death. The same blooms that grace a garden in the spring are the ones that wilt in the heat of summer and fade in the chill of autumn. In this way, flowers remind us that life is finite, and that all things must eventually pass. The brief lifespan of a flower makes it a poignant symbol of mortality. Its beauty exists not in its permanence, but in its ephemeral nature. A flower blooms, reaches its peak, and fades away, leaving behind seeds to continue the cycle. This is a cycle that mirrors the human experience, reminding us to cherish every moment of beauty and joy, knowing that it is fleeting. In many cultures, flowers are also associated with the dead, as they symbolized both remembrance and the cycle of life. At funerals, flowers are often used as tributes, their colors and fragrances offering comfort to the grieving. A single bloom placed on a grave speaks volumes about love, loss, and the enduring connection between the living and the departed. The act of offering flowers to the dead is a way of honoring their memory while acknowledging the impermanence of life. Flowers, in their fragility, become eternal symbols of the love that transcends time, a love that continues to blossom even after death. Moreover, flowers are symbols of hope. In times of hardship, when the world feels bleak, the sight of a flower can reignite the spark of hope. Flowers have a way of pushing through the harshest conditions, finding a way to bloom even in the most unexpected places. Whether it's a wildflower sprouting between cracks in the pavement or a daffodil pushing through the snow, flowers remind us of the resilience of life. They remind us that even in our darkest moments, there is always the potential for new growth, new opportunities, and new beginnings. Flowers, in their quiet persistence, show us that beauty can emerge from struggle and that life can always find a way to endure. Throughout history, flowers have also been symbols of transformation. Just as a flower goes through stages of growth, germination, budding, blooming, and eventual wilting, so too do humans undergo transformations throughout their lives. Flowers are symbolic of this process of change, representing growth, maturity, and, ultimately, the acceptance of impermanence. They remind us that change is a natural part of life and that every stage has its own beauty. From the tiny seed to the full bloom, flowers show us that even in the moments of transition, there is something beautiful to be found. Flowers also hold a place in the spiritual and religious realms, where they symbolize a connection to the divine. In many traditions, flowers are seen as gifts from the gods, offerings of beauty that reflect the divine order of the universe. In Hinduism, the lotus flower represents purity and enlightenment, emerging from the murky waters to bloom in the light of the sun. In Christianity, the lily is often associated with the Virgin Mary, symbolizing purity and grace. These flowers, though different in appearance and meaning, share a common thread. They represent a link between the earthly and the divine, reminding us that beauty and spirituality are intertwined. Even in modern times, flowers continue to serve as powerful symbols of beauty, life, and renewal. From the vibrant floral patterns in fashion to the bouquets given on special occasions, flowers still convey emotions and meanings that go beyond the surface. They are timeless symbols that remind us of the power of nature, the importance of love and life, and the inevitable passage of time. In their fragility, they teach us to appreciate the present moment, to celebrate the beauty around us, and to hold on to hope, even when life seems uncertain. Flowers are more than just a gift from nature. They are eternal symbols of the beauty and complexity of life itself. Their ability to symbolize beauty, life, and renewal has made them a universal and enduring part of human culture and emotion. Through their vibrant colors and delicate petals, flowers communicate in ways that words cannot fully capture, reminding us of the preciousness of life, the inevitability of change, and the constant presence of hope. They are the enduring symbols of life itself, fragile yet strong, fleeting yet eternal. Spring has always been a season that stirs the soul, filled with new life, blossoming flowers, and the promise of warmer days. And within the heart of this season, Flora's influence lingers in countless spring festivals celebrated around the world today. From joyous gatherings that honor the renewal of nature to vibrant floral displays that celebrate life and fertility, Flora's legacy can be found in the rituals, symbols, and traditions that still mark the arrival of spring. One of the most prominent examples of Flora's lasting influence can be seen in the continued celebration of floral festivals. Around the world, people gather to honor the blooming of flowers, just as the Romans did in the days of Flora herself. The Floralia festival in ancient Rome was a vivid celebration of the goddess Flora, with flowers as symbols of fertility, growth, and renewal. In modern times, this love of flowers has blossomed into some of the most beautiful spring festivals, such as the famed Cherry Blossom Festival in Japan. Each year, cities and towns across Japan celebrate the fleeting beauty of cherry blossoms with picnics, parades, and vibrant celebrations that honor the brief yet magnificent blooming of the sakura. The symbolism of the cherry blossom, ephemeral yet stunning, speaks to the cycle of life, just as Flora's own flowers represented the ever-changing nature of existence. Through this celebration, Flora's essence continues to grace the earth, reminding us of both life's fragility and its enduring beauty. In the Netherlands, the Keukenhof Gardens and the surrounding flower festivals bring Flora's spirit to life through the dazzling displays of tulips, daffodils, and hyacinths. Thousands of visitors from around the world flock to this massive garden each spring, where the blooms cover acres of land in a riot of color. The festival, which has roots in Dutch horticulture and the long-standing love of flowers, echoes the traditions of Flora's time, celebrating the magic and majesty of flowers. With each petal that unfurls, Flora's mythology, linked to the earth's fertility and the renewal of life, resurfaces as people come together to marvel at the beauty of the natural world. Across the world in India, the arrival of spring is celebrated with the festival of Holi, known as the Festival of Colors. While Holi has roots in Hindu mythology and is celebrated with joyful displays of color and the throwing of powdered dyes, there is a deeper connection to Flora's influence in the festival's themes of renewal and rebirth. Holi is celebrated at the beginning of spring, when the earth begins to awaken from the dormancy of winter. The festival marks the triumph of good over evil and is a time for people to come together, forgive past wrongs, and embrace the coming of new beginnings. The colors, vivid hues that represent the flowers of spring, create an overwhelming sense of life and energy, much like Flora's celebration in ancient Rome. Through the exuberant celebration of color, Holi invites people to embrace the beauty of nature's renewal, a theme that Flora herself embodied. In the United Kingdom, the May Day Festival, with its ancient roots, offers another glimpse into Flora's influence. On the first day of May, communities across England and other parts of Europe gather to celebrate the arrival of spring with maypole dances, feasts, and the crowning of a May Queen. Traditionally, The May Queen would wear a crown of flowers, paying homage to Flora and her symbolic connection to fertility and the earth's blossoming. The Maypole dance, a spirited, colorful display of unity, also draws from the traditions of celebrating nature's vitality and renewal. These celebrations, although modernized in some places, still echo the ancient rituals that honored Flora, connecting people to the earth's rhythm and the joy that spring brings. In the United States, there are numerous festivals celebrating the arrival of spring, with flowers at their center. The National Cherry Blossom Festival in Washington, D.C., for example, celebrates not only the beauty of the blossoms themselves, but also the spirit of renewal that they represent. Thousands of visitors come to witness the annual blooming of the cherry trees, which were gifted to the United States by Japan in 1912. This celebration has grown into a major event, filled with parades, performances, and cultural exhibitions, all paying tribute to the magic of spring and the flowers that bloom in its honor. Much like the ancient Roman celebrations of Flora, this modern festival reminds us of the way flowers symbolize hope, renewal, and the promise of new beginnings. Flora's legacy also lives on in the many spring equinox festivals celebrated around the world, marking the exact moment when day and night are in perfect balance. In many cultures, the equinox is seen as a time of harmony and rebirth. In some parts of South America, for example, the indigenous people celebrate the arrival of spring with rituals that honor Pachamama, the earth goddess, who is closely linked to fertility, growth, and renewal. The festivals are full of music, dancing, and the display of vibrant flowers, a reflection of Flora's connection to nature's cycles of life and growth. In these ceremonies, flowers are offered as gifts to the earth, symbolizing both gratitude and the continuing cycle of life. Even in the quieter moments of spring, Flora's influence is felt. Gardens across the globe, from community gardens to personal backyards, are often cultivated with an eye toward honoring the beauty of flowers and plants. People take the time to plant seeds, tend to their gardens, and welcome the blooms that appear each spring, making them a central part of life's rhythms. In this way, Flora continues to inspire people to connect with the earth, to nurture it, and to celebrate the flourishing beauty that arises from it. In these festivals, both grand and simple, Flora's essence lives on, wrapped in the vibrant colors of blooming flowers, the sweet fragrances that fill the air, and the joyous celebration of nature's renewal. Every petal that opens, every bud that unfurls, is a testament to her influence, a reminder that spring is not just a season, but a celebration of life itself. Whether through the colors of Holi, the dances of May Day, or the awe-inspiring floral displays at modern festivals, Flora's legacy continues to inspire wonder, joy, and reverence for the beauty and power of the natural world. She lives in every blossom, in every festival, and in every person who finds joy in the springtime blooms that transform the earth from gray to vibrant color. Flora, the Roman goddess of flowers and spring, represents a universal concept deeply embedded in the cycles of nature, growth, fertility, and renewal. But while she is an iconic figure in Roman mythology, similar deities appear in many cultures across the world. From the lush fields of Mesopotamia to the blooming forests of the Americas, countless traditions have celebrated nature's fertility and beauty, each with its own unique interpretation of Flora's archetype. One of the closest parallels to Flora can be found in the Greek goddess Chloris, a figure whose domain also covers flowers and the blooming of spring. According to Greek mythology, Chloris was the goddess of flowers, often associated with the renewal of life that follows winter. Her story closely mirrors that of Flora in Roman myth. Chloris is said to have transformed into a radiant goddess after being granted the ability to create flowers by the god Zephyrus, the west wind. The connection between Chloris and Flora is so close that some scholars have suggested that the Roman Flora was, in fact, derived from the Greek Chloris. Both goddesses symbolize the abundance of flowers and the coming of spring, with each representing the power of nature to rejuvenate the earth after a long, cold winter. Another significant counterpart to Flora exists in the Hindu tradition, where the goddess of flora and fertility is known as Prithvi or Bhudevi. Prithvi is the earth goddess, a nurturing figure who embodies the fertile soil from which all life grows. While Prithvi is not solely associated with flowers, she does represent the fertility of the land and the generative forces that bring about the flowering of nature. In Hindu mythology, she is often depicted as the nurturing mother who sustains all forms of life, and the flowers that bloom on her land are seen as manifestations of her grace and abundance. The worship of Prithvi also coincides with seasonal celebrations, much like Flora's festivals, honoring the harvest and the renewal of life on earth. In Celtic mythology, a similar figure is known as Blodeuwedd, the flower goddess. In the Welsh tradition, Blodeuwedd was created by the magician Gwydion from 9 different flowers, and she is often seen as a symbol of the beauty, fertility, and fragility of nature. Unlike Flora, whose role is more directly tied to the renewal of spring and the fertility of the earth, Blodeuwedd represents the link between the natural world and the mystical realm. Her connection to flowers and the earth is just as profound, and like Flora, she embodies the transformative power of the natural world. However, Blodeuwedd's myth also carries a darker side. Her transformation into an owl after betraying her husband reflects the duality of nature, where beauty and fragility are often accompanied by loss and consequence. In the Native American traditions, particularly those of the Great Plains and the Southwest, floral deities also play a central role. The Pueblo people of the American Southwest honor a number of deities tied to nature's cycles, one of the most notable being the Kachina spirits. While not directly equivalent to Flora, the Kachinas are spirits of the natural world, and many of them are associated with flowers, rain, and fertility. These spirits are believed to bring rain to the parched land, nurturing the growth of plants and flowers that are essential to the people's survival. In the ceremonies dedicated to these spirits, flowers are often used as offerings to ensure a prosperous harvest and the continued fertility of the earth. The Kachinas, like Flora, represent the life-giving forces of nature, connecting the people to the land and the seasonal rhythms that govern life. In Chinese mythology, the goddess Xiwangmu, the Queen Mother of the West, is a powerful and revered figure associated with fertility and the blooming of flowers. While her role is broader than that of Flora, as she is also the ruler of the immortals and governs the peaches of immortality, her association with blossoms and flowers connects her to Flora's realm. The legendary Peach Blossom Spring in Chinese folklore, a place of eternal spring where flowers bloom perpetually, is often seen as a symbol of the perfect harmony between nature and the divine, a theme that resonates with the renewal and fertility that Flora embodies in Roman myth. Similarly, the Egyptian goddess Hathor shares qualities with Flora in that she is the goddess of love, fertility, and the natural world. Though she is more often associated with music and joy, Hathor's link to nature, and particularly to the nurturing aspects of motherhood, places her in a similar position to Flora. Hathor is depicted with symbols of fertility, such as flowers, as she presides over the creation of life and its nurturing. In ancient Egypt, offerings of flowers were often made to Hathor to invoke her blessings for fertility and abundance, paralleling the role Flora played in ensuring the flourishing of the earth during spring. In African mythologies, particularly among the Yoruba people, Oshun is a goddess who shares a deep connection with nature, fertility, and the growth of plants and flowers. Oshun is often depicted as a beautiful, youthful goddess whose domain includes rivers, water, and all that blooms. Just as Flora oversees the blossoming of flowers in Roman mythology, Oshun is seen as the goddess who nurtures the earth's natural beauty, promoting the growth of crops and the flourishing of life. Her symbolism ties her to the earth's fertility and to the bountiful harvests that come from the nurturing of nature's cycles. Offerings of honey, flowers, and fruits are made to Oshun in hopes of ensuring fertility, health, and abundance. The recurring themes of fertility, the blossoming of flowers, and the renewal of life appear in mythologies from diverse cultures, showing that Flora's essence transcends the boundaries of Roman mythology. From the delicate petals of Chloris and Blodeuwedd to the nurturing embrace of Prithvi and Oshun, these deities represent the same eternal cycle of life, growth, and renewal that Flora embodies in Roman myth. Through their stories, they remind us of the intricate connection between humanity and nature, the ever-turning wheel of the seasons, the blossoming flowers, and the eternal promise of new beginnings. Each culture has its unique way of telling these stories, but at the core of it all is the shared belief in the sacredness of nature's fertility and the beauty that flowers bring to the world. Flora, the Roman goddess of flowers and spring, is not only a symbol of nature's cyclical rebirth, but also a profound representation of femininity and fertility. Over centuries, her image has served as a powerful and enduring symbol of the feminine divine, embodying the nurturing, creative, and transformative aspects of femininity that have been celebrated and revered in many cultures throughout history. From the ancient world to modern-day spirituality, Flora's mythology captures the essence of femininity, its capacity to give life, inspire growth, and sustain the natural order. In Roman society, Flora's role as a goddess of flowers was intrinsically tied to the fertility of the earth. She governed the blossoming of flowers and the blooming of spring, a time when life bursts forth from the soil in a riot of colors. This connection to nature's renewal made her a symbol of maternal fertility. Like many other fertility deities across cultures, Flora's presence was linked to the female power of creation, the ability to give birth and nourish life. The image of Flora was often depicted as a radiant young woman, clothed in the vibrancy of blooming flowers, embodying the beauty and vitality that femininity brings to the world. Her very being was an expression of life cycles, reminding society of the deep connection between the earth and the feminine divine. Flora's symbolic connection to fertility was not limited to agricultural growth alone, it extended to human reproduction and the nurturing of life in all its forms. As the goddess who presided over the flourishing of flowers, she also represented the female capacity to bring forth new life, an idea that resonated deeply within Roman society. Flora was often called upon by women seeking blessings for fertility, both in terms of their crops and their children. In this sense, she became a figure of maternal protection, as women turned to her in hopes of securing a fruitful future for their families. Flora's blessings were considered essential for the growth of both the land and the people, a powerful manifestation of feminine energy in its most abundant form. Her association with the feminine divine extended beyond fertility to include the more subtle aspects of femininity, beauty, grace, and transformation. As flowers bloom and wither, so too do women experience different stages of life, marked by periods of growth, blossoming, and eventual decline. Flora's story encapsulates these stages, suggesting that femininity is not just about reproduction, but about embracing the full spectrum of existence, the youth and vitality of spring, the maturity of summer, and the wisdom that comes with age. This layered understanding of femininity, embodied by Flora, highlights the importance of both the nurturing and transformative aspects of the feminine experience. In many ways, Flora's story is also a reflection of the power of feminine energy to inspire change and renewal. Just as she brings the spring season to life by encouraging the growth of flowers, Flora represents the feminine power to rejuvenate and transform. She is a goddess who embodies the capacity for growth, both in nature and within oneself. The blooming flowers that surround her in ancient depictions are not only a visual celebration of the earth's beauty, but also a symbol of inner growth and spiritual renewal. Flora's ability to renew the earth year after year, bringing fresh life with each spring, mirrors the resilience and regenerative power inherent in the feminine divine. Throughout history, Flora's role as a fertility goddess has intersected with various other female deities who embody similar themes of feminine power, beauty, and creation. For example, in Greek mythology, Flora's counterpart, Chloris, shares her dominion over flowers and spring, further highlighting the shared significance of femininity and nature's cycles. Chloris, like Flora, represents both the literal and symbolic power of femininity, the ability to create, nurture, and renew. These goddesses, though rooted in different cultures, share a common archetype that highlights the universal reverence for the feminine as the force that brings life into being. In later centuries, as Christianity spread and many ancient mythologies were absorbed into new religious paradigms, Flora's image remained a symbol of the feminine divine. In medieval Europe, during the flowering of the Renaissance, Flora's presence as a symbol of beauty, fertility, and spring continued to inspire poets, artists, and thinkers. Renaissance artists often depicted Flora as a divine figure, celebrating her beauty and the renewal of life she represented. These representations of Flora, often depicted with flowers in her hair and a flowing gown, became timeless icons of femininity in art. They were symbolic of the divine feminine, a celebration of both the physical and spiritual aspects of femininity that were so revered in ancient mythologies. In more recent times, Flora has remained a prominent figure in the resurgence of interest in paganism and nature-based spirituality. As modern society has become more attuned to environmental consciousness and the cycles of nature, Flora's symbolism as a guardian of life, growth, and renewal has resonated with a new generation of spiritual seekers. In modern pagan practices, she is invoked as a goddess who embodies not only fertility but also the profound connection between humanity and the earth. Flora's image is revered as a representation of the life-giving force of nature, reminding us that femininity is not only about creation but also about the deep, interwoven relationship we share with the natural world. The symbolism of flowers has also made Flora a relevant and beloved figure in the modern feminist movement. Just as flowers have long been associated with femininity, they now serve as powerful symbols of women's empowerment and the celebration of female strength. The act of nurturing and protecting life, much like the blossoming of flowers, is no longer seen as a passive role but as one of immense power. Flora's image, as the eternal goddess of fertility and spring, continues to inspire women across the world who embrace their connection to the earth and the inherent power of creation. From her ancient Roman roots to her modern-day reinterpretations, Flora represents an enduring symbol of femininity, fertility, and renewal. Her mythology serves as a reminder of the transformative power that resides within the feminine, whether in the blooming of flowers, the creation of life, or the nurturing of the earth itself. Flora's legacy reminds us that femininity is not just about beauty or reproduction, but about the deep, transformative energy that connects us all to the natural world and to the cycles of life itself. Her story, like the flowers she presides over, continues to bloom across time, touching hearts and inspiring generations with its timeless message of growth, beauty, and renewal. Flora, the Roman goddess of flowers and spring, has long been a symbol of fertility, beauty, and the cyclical nature of life. Her mythology, deeply rooted in the Roman pantheon, continues to resonate across cultures and centuries. However, as society shifts toward a more complex understanding of identity, ecology, and spirituality, there's an opportunity to reinterpret Flora's story in ways that speak to contemporary audiences. Adapting Flora's myth for the 21st century offers a chance to explore new dimensions of her symbolism, empowering individuals to connect with nature, their own creativity, and the very essence of life itself. One of the most potent ways Flora's mythology can be reimagined is through the lens of environmental activism and climate change. In a world where the impacts of environmental degradation are becoming increasingly urgent, Flora's role as the goddess of flowers, growth, and renewal aligns perfectly with modern concerns for sustainability. Reinterpreting Flora as a symbol for environmental stewardship and ecological balance could serve as a rallying cry for those working to protect the planet. Her relationship to the seasons, spring in particular, when new life blooms, is a direct metaphor for the importance of nurturing the earth and restoring what has been lost. Flora's mythology could be reinterpreted as a reminder that we are stewards of the natural world and that we must preserve the delicate balance between humanity and nature. The act of planting flowers, cultivating gardens, and tending to the environment could be seen as a form of honoring Flora, embracing her regenerative power, and participating in a broader effort to restore the world around us. Flora's association with fertility and growth further enhances her potential as a figure of ecological activism. Fertility, in the ancient world, was not limited to human reproduction but extended to the earth itself. Flora's role as a goddess of fertility connects her directly to the land, to the growth of crops, and to the abundance of nature. Today, this association can be reimagined as a call for sustainable farming practices and land stewardship. As modern agriculture continues to face challenges related to overuse of pesticides, soil depletion, and monoculture farming, Flora's mythology can be a symbol of the need for more sustainable and holistic approaches to farming. Just as Flora nurtures the earth's abundance, she can inspire individuals and communities to take responsibility for how they cultivate and interact with the land, encouraging practices that restore rather than deplete. Flora's relationship with the environment can also be seen through the lens of climate change. Climate change is one of the most pressing issues of our time, and the consequences of a warming planet are already visible in the form of changing weather patterns, rising sea levels, and the destruction of ecosystems. Flora's mythology can serve as a reminder that the earth is not just a resource to be exploited, but a living entity that requires our respect and care. By reinterpreting Flora as a goddess who embodies the Earth's cycles, we can view climate change not just as a political or scientific issue, but as a spiritual one. Flora's role as the protector of the Earth's fertility and growth can inspire people to advocate for policies that address climate change and to take personal action by reducing their carbon footprints, conserving resources, and supporting green energy initiatives. Flora's mythology is not just a reminder of nature's beauty, but a call to recognize the sacredness of the earth. The reverence for nature that Flora represents can be harnessed to inspire greater awareness of environmental issues. In a world where nature often feels distant or disconnected from our everyday lives, Flora's mythology can serve as a powerful tool for reconnecting with the natural world. By celebrating the changing of the seasons, the blooming of flowers, and the wonder of the Earth's ecosystems, Flora's story can inspire people to see the world through a more ecological lens, where the health of the planet is seen as directly tied to the health of humanity. Just as Flora brings life to the barren, her mythology can be a reminder that we, too, have the power to bring new life to the planet through our actions. Flora's legacy also offers a chance to reclaim ancient practices of nature-based spirituality and ecological reverence. In the Roman world, Flora was not just a goddess of spring, but a figure who embodied the vital connection between humans and the earth. The ancient Romans celebrated Flora in rituals that honored the earth's fertility and its role in sustaining life. In the modern era, these practices can be adapted to emphasize environmental consciousness and sustainable living. Flora's festivals, once centered around the celebration of the spring harvest and the fertility of the earth, can be reimagined as modern eco-festivals that promote environmental awareness, conservation, and sustainability. These festivals could involve planting trees, cleaning up natural habitats, or raising awareness about pressing ecological issues, all while honoring the spirit of Flora and the Earth's renewal. Flora's association with spring and the blossoming of flowers also positions her as a symbol of hope and transformation. Just as flowers bloom after the cold of winter, there is always the potential for growth and change, no matter how dire the situation may seem. In a time when environmental degradation can feel overwhelming, Flora's story can remind us that change is possible. By taking small steps, planting a garden, reducing waste, supporting sustainable businesses, we can all contribute to a larger movement toward healing the planet. Flora's mythology can be a call to embrace the Earth's potential for renewal and to recognize that even the smallest actions can have a profound impact on the world around us. Flora's mythology, when reinterpreted in the context of ecological activism, offers a compelling and transformative vision for the future. As a goddess of flowers, fertility, and growth, she represents the vitality and interconnectedness of all life. In a time when environmental challenges are more pressing than ever, Flora's story can inspire a deep sense of responsibility and reverence for the planet. Whether through protecting biodiversity, advocating for sustainable farming, or confronting climate change, Flora's mythology offers a powerful framework for modern ecological activism. By looking to Flora as a symbol of hope, renewal, and interconnectedness, we can find the inspiration to work together to protect and preserve the earth for future generations. Flora, as a goddess of flowers and spring, transcends her Roman origins to become a cultural archetype, a universal symbol of growth, renewal, and the unbreakable cycles of life. Her influence reaches far beyond the borders of ancient Rome, making her a figure that resonates across cultures, time periods, and disciplines. In the same way that flowers bloom, fade, and bloom again, Flora embodies the natural rhythm of life, reminding us of the inevitability of change and the beauty that comes with it. At the core of Flora's archetype is her representation of the cycle of life. Flowers are born, they grow, they bloom, and then they wither, only to make way for new life. This cyclical nature is an inherent part of existence. For humans, it speaks to the constant movement between birth, death, and rebirth, which is echoed in the seasons, and the transformation of youth to adulthood, and even in the larger flow of civilizations and cultures. Just as flowers have their time in the sun, so too do the people and ideas that shape the world. Flora, as the embodiment of this cycle, connects the human experience to the natural world, inviting individuals to embrace the ebb and flow of existence, knowing that even in moments of decay, renewal is always possible. Her symbolism as a goddess of spring gives her an especially potent role as a cultural archetype of rebirth. Spring is traditionally seen as a time when the earth wakes up from the slumber of winter, when flowers burst forth from the earth, and when new possibilities emerge. The image of Flora, often depicted with flowers in her hair or surrounded by blooming blossoms, is a powerful reminder of the potential for new beginnings. In many ways, she represents the eternal promise that no matter how harsh the winter, be it in the natural world or in our personal lives, spring will always come, bringing with it new opportunities, growth, and hope. This message resonates deeply in modern times when people face periods of personal struggle or societal upheaval. Flora stands as a timeless symbol of resilience, reminding us that renewal is possible and that even the darkest times eventually give way to light. Flora's universal appeal also lies in the symbolism of flowers themselves. Flowers, in nearly every culture, have been associated with beauty, purity, and the fleeting nature of life. They are often seen as expressions of love, joy, and life itself. Yet, they also carry a deeper message: they are temporary. Just as a flower blooms with a burst of color and fragrance, life, too, can be intense and full of wonder, yet it is fragile and fleeting. Flora's archetype taps into this understanding of beauty as ephemeral, urging people to appreciate the present moment and to recognize the preciousness of time. This realization is something shared by individuals from all walks of life and across different belief systems, making Flora a truly universal figure in cultural storytelling. Another key aspect of Flora's archetype is her association with fertility and abundance. Flowers are vital to the reproduction of plants, and by extension, the survival of ecosystems. In many cultures, fertility is celebrated as a divine gift, and Flora, as a goddess connected to nature's most fundamental processes, represents the power of creation itself. Her influence extends beyond the literal growth of plants. It speaks to the fertility of ideas, relationships, and communities. In this way, Flora becomes a symbol of all forms of creative expression, whether artistic, intellectual, or spiritual. She represents the creative force that drives human innovation and connection, and she serves as a reminder that growth is not only physical but also intellectual and emotional. Throughout history, Flora has also served as a cultural archetype that transcends gender roles. In many mythologies, the gods and goddesses of nature are often portrayed as embodying both masculine and feminine qualities, but Flora's archetype, specifically, highlights the feminine power of nurturing, growth, and renewal. Her ability to nurture life and inspire beauty is a profound statement on the strength found in femininity, an unspoken yet deeply felt force that sustains life on Earth. Flora's nurturing presence provides a counterbalance to the harshness of the natural world, representing the gentleness and patience required for true growth. This makes her a symbol of feminine energy that exists in harmony with the natural order, one that is essential for the flourishing of life in all its forms. In contemporary culture, Flora's archetype is still alive and well, especially in movements surrounding environmentalism, sustainability, and the recognition of the sacredness of nature. The resurgence of interest in gardening, organic farming, and environmental conservation all reflect the growing recognition of the need to nurture the earth, just as Flora nurtures the flowers and plants of the world. As the global community grapples with environmental degradation, Flora's timeless message of renewal and care for the earth has never been more relevant. She serves as a gentle but powerful call to action, urging humanity to reconnect with the earth, protect its ecosystems, and cultivate a future that celebrates the beauty of nature. Moreover, Flora's archetype is not limited to her role in nature alone. She has also become a cultural figure representing personal growth and self-discovery. Just as flowers go through a process of blooming and unfolding, so too do individuals go through phases of personal development. Flora's mythology encourages the embracing of one's own growth process, even when it feels difficult or uncertain. Her symbolism can inspire those going through periods of change to trust in their own ability to bloom and flourish, just as the earth renews itself year after year. This archetype of personal transformation, grounded in the natural world, has universal appeal for anyone on a path of self-improvement or seeking a deeper connection to their inner potential. Flora's archetype also reflects a deep connection to the cycles of time. the changing of the seasons, the blooming and withering of flowers, and the gradual progress of growth all mirror the passage of time in human life. As the earth moves through its cycles, so do we. Flora teaches us to accept that change is inevitable, but it is also beautiful. We can look to her as a reminder that, much like the flowers, we too have our time to bloom and, in our own way, to fade, but that this cycle is not a sign of loss. Instead, it is a natural part of existence, one that must be embraced with grace and understanding. Whether through her association with fertility, the blossoming of flowers, or her role in human renewal, Flora remains a deeply influential cultural archetype. She is a goddess whose power lies not in domination or control, but in the quiet, steady force of growth and rebirth. From the delicate petals of a flower to the expansive fields of blooms, Flora serves as a reminder that life is constantly evolving and that renewal, no matter how challenging, is always within our reach. In every corner of the world, from ancient mythology to modern environmentalism, Flora stands as a symbol of hope, beauty, and the endless potential for growth that resides in all of us. Flora, the Roman goddess of flowers and spring, has transcended her mythological roots to become a recognizable figure in modern popular culture. Over the centuries, she has taken on various forms, often symbolizing beauty, fertility, nature, and renewal. In music, film, and fashion, Flora's influence is seen in many references, both direct and indirect, capturing the essence of her timeless connection to nature and the cycles of life. In music, Flora's presence often emerges as a symbol of the rejuvenating power of spring and the natural world. Her influence is particularly strong in genres that explore themes of nature, femininity, and personal renewal. For instance, the classical composer Antonio Vivaldi's The Four Seasons, while not directly focused on Flora, evokes the imagery of spring, a season closely associated with the goddess. The lively and vibrant movements in spring encapsulate the spirit of Flora, with its bursts of new life and color, echoing her power to bring flowers and vitality back to the earth after winter's slumber. In more contemporary music, Flora's symbolism can be found in pop songs that celebrate nature, love, and transformation. The connection between Flora and the blooming of flowers is a powerful metaphor for personal growth, love's blossoming, and the reawakening of hope. Artists like Florence and the Machine, known for their lush, nature-inspired imagery, often channel Flora's essence through song lyrics, album art, and their overall aesthetic. In their music, the theme of a cycle, growth, struggle, and renewal is prevalent, much like the symbolism Flora carries. Songs like Shake It Out reflect the process of letting go of past burdens and stepping into a new, brighter future, akin to the rejuvenating effects Flora represents during the spring season. Flora also appears in film, particularly in productions that emphasize nature's role in the development of human life or where the changing seasons are integral to the narrative. One such example is the 2010 animated film Avatar, where the planet Pandora is alive with vibrant ecosystems and interconnected life forms. Though the film doesn't reference Flora by name, the overarching theme of nature's life force, similar to the goddess's connection to growth and fertility, can be seen in the film's portrayal of the planet's rejuvenating force. The lush, ever-blooming landscapes of Pandora evoke Flora's spirit, reminding the audience of the nurturing, renewing power of nature. In a more direct connection, the 2009 movie Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief offers a nod to Flora through its depiction of the Greek goddess Chloris, the counterpart to Flora, whose domain is similarly tied to flowers and the blooming of life. While Flora is not named explicitly, the influence of flower symbolism, along with themes of natural renewal, carries through in scenes where characters interact with nature and experience growth in their own lives. Fashion, too, has drawn heavily from Flora's association with flowers, femininity, and beauty. Designers often turn to the goddess for inspiration when creating collections that evoke the essence of spring and renewal. Floral prints, lush textures, and pastel colors are some of the primary ways Flora's image comes to life on the runway. For instance, fashion houses like Dolce & Gabbana and Alexander McQueen have used floral patterns extensively in their collections, creating a visual tribute to Flora's influence. These designs not only showcase the literal beauty of flowers, but also celebrate the underlying symbolism of fertility, growth, and new beginnings that Flora embodies. Fashion icons and celebrities also evoke Flora in their own personal styles. Floral dresses, garlands, and accessories often appear during spring months, especially at events like the Met Gala, where designers interpret Flora's timeless beauty through extravagant, nature-inspired couture. The red carpet often becomes a place where the goddess's presence can be felt through fashion choices that mirror her delicate and feminine nature. Celebrities like Beyoncé and Emma Watson, for example, are often seen in gowns and outfits that feature intricate floral details, reinforcing Flora's association with the aesthetic beauty of nature. These references to Flora in fashion go beyond the visual, capturing the transformative energy that the goddess represents. Flora's essence in popular culture also extends to literature, where she often appears as a character or as a symbolic figure. In children's books, for example, Flora might be depicted as a kind-hearted, nurturing character who cares for the flowers and creatures of the forest, fostering growth and harmony. Her connection to the earth and the nurturing cycles of nature makes her an ideal figure in stories that encourage readers to appreciate the environment and respect the balance of life. In the world of social media and digital culture, Flora's symbolism is utilized in memes, emojis, and aesthetic movements that focus on the celebration of nature and growth. Influencers, particularly those in the wellness and eco-conscious spaces, often reference Flora's traits as a way of promoting a lifestyle that is in tune with the natural world. The flourishing of floral imagery across platforms like Instagram highlights Flora's ability to inspire and connect with audiences through the visual beauty of flowers, often tied to themes of self-care, environmental responsibility, and feminine energy. Flora's influence also extends to the growing environmental movements, where she is seen as a figurehead for sustainability, conservation, and ecological awareness. Flora's mythological connection to the earth and the cycles of nature has made her an emblem of hope for those fighting to protect the planet. As climate change becomes an increasingly urgent issue, references to Flora remind people of the intrinsic link between humans and the environment. Her mythology serves as a call to action, an urging to nurture the earth, much like the goddess nurtures the blooming flowers of the world. Her role as a figure of beauty and vitality has made Flora a fitting inspiration for campaigns that emphasize the preservation of natural spaces, the protection of biodiversity, and the importance of nurturing the earth. Through these associations, Flora's mythology lives on as a force that speaks to modern concerns about the environment, urging both individuals and communities to care for the planet as a precious, living entity. In the world of modern pop culture, Flora's mythological roots continue to inspire creativity and innovation. From music and film to fashion and environmentalism, her timeless symbols of renewal, growth, and femininity find expression in a variety of ways. Flora's presence is felt in the blooming of flowers each spring, in the colors and patterns of the fashion world, in the themes of art and literature, and in the collective actions of those who work to protect the earth. She has evolved from a goddess of ancient Rome to a universal symbol of nature's boundless beauty and the cyclical power of life. And in that, her influence will undoubtedly continue to flourish, just like the flowers she governs. Flora, as the Roman goddess of flowers and spring, has captivated imaginations for centuries. Her mythology, though deeply rooted in Roman culture, has not remained confined to the borders of ancient Italy. Over time, Flora's influence has spread across the globe, with her symbols, stories, and qualities finding echoes in various cultures and belief systems. While different regions have adapted and transformed her myth, the core themes of growth, fertility, and the cyclical nature of life remain consistent, transcending geographical and cultural boundaries. In Europe, Flora's mythology began as part of the Roman pantheon but was easily absorbed into the cultural fabric of neighboring societies, especially those influenced by Roman rule. As Christianity began to spread throughout the continent, Flora's role as the goddess of fertility and nature was gradually downplayed, yet traces of her influence lingered in the traditions of the people. Her image of beauty and abundance found its way into the celebrations of spring. The theme of renewal symbolized by her was repurposed to align with Christian festivals, like Easter. The resurrection and renewal inherent in these celebrations are not so different from the rebirth Flora brings each spring. While Flora herself was no longer worshipped in the Christian context, her legacy as a symbol of life and growth continued to resonate. In the Middle East, Flora's story intertwined with various regional deities tied to fertility and the natural world. One could compare her to the Babylonian goddess Ishtar, who, like Flora, represented fertility, beauty, and love. Ishtar's worship was integral to the agricultural cycles of ancient Mesopotamia, just as Flora's role was to ensure the fertility of the Roman earth. The connections between these deities lie in the common belief that the earth's fertility is tied to divine power, whether it's through the blossoming of flowers, the fertility of animals, or the abundance of crops. In ancient Iran, the Persian goddess Anahita, associated with fertility and water, shares many characteristics with Flora as well, reinforcing the universal themes of the nurturing power of the female divine across various civilizations. Beyond the West, Flora's mythology found fertile ground in India. The goddess Lakshmi, known for her role as a symbol of wealth, beauty, and prosperity, bears striking similarities to Flora in her role as a bringer of beauty and fertility. Though Lakshmi's primary association is with material wealth, she also represents the flourishing of life in all its forms, much like Flora's embodiment of nature's abundance and regeneration. In the context of Hinduism, Flora's myth aligns with the themes of growth and the importance of seasonal change, illustrating how various cultures intertwine the power of feminine deities with the cycles of nature. In East Asia, Flora's influence can be seen through figures such as the Japanese kami of cherry blossoms, sakura. Sakura's seasonal bloom symbolizes renewal, beauty, and the fleeting nature of life, much in the same way Flora does through her association with the springtime blooms. While Sakura isn't directly based on Flora, the shared concept of life blossoming and the symbolic nature of flowers links these two figures. The cherry blossom festivals held in Japan each spring echo the same kind of celebration that once occurred during the Roman Floralia, reinforcing the themes of renewal and beauty that Flora's mythology represents. In China, the goddess Zhuangmu, associated with fertility and immortality, holds similar ties to Flora, especially when one considers her connection to the blossoming of plants and the natural world. In Africa, where nature and the earth are often central to religious beliefs, Flora's symbolism also resonates with various traditions. The Yoruba goddess Oshun, like Flora, is associated with fertility, beauty, and the nurturing aspects of the earth. Oshun's connection to water, rivers, and the life-sustaining force of nature mirrors Flora's role in nurturing the earth's bounty. In other African traditions, particularly those rooted in the reverence of the earth and agricultural cycles, Flora's essence manifests in deities that embody the regenerative forces of the land, ensuring that crops flourish and the people are blessed with abundance. In the Americas, Flora's mythology blends with indigenous beliefs and the reverence for nature found across the continent. The concept of a feminine, nurturing earth spirit can be seen in Native American cultures, where the earth itself is often personified as a mother. Figures like the Earth Mother in various tribes echo Flora's association with fertility and growth, connecting the goddess to the rhythms of nature and the land. These myths often emphasize the cycles of planting and harvesting, where the earth's fertility is linked to the divine, much as Flora's influence on agriculture and spring was celebrated in ancient Rome. In the modern era, Flora's symbolism has expanded into the realms of environmentalism and feminism, reclaiming her as a figure of empowerment in contemporary movements. Flora's connection to nature's cycles of life, death, and rebirth has become a potent symbol in discussions of ecological sustainability, with environmental activists drawing from her mythology to champion the protection of natural resources. Flora's identity as a goddess of fertility and beauty has found new meaning in the context of climate change, where the preservation of the Earth's beauty and the renewal of the environment are seen as vital for the survival of future generations. Feminist movements have also reinterpreted Flora's role in the modern context, seeing in her the embodiment of feminine strength, creativity, and the ability to give life. Flora's mythology, once confined to the natural world, has now been adapted as a symbol of women's power and autonomy. In literature, art, and political discourse, Flora's attributes of nurturing and fertility are celebrated as qualities that empower women to shape their own destinies, much like the goddess shaped the landscape with her flowers. Flora's mythology is also increasingly seen in a global context, influencing the way we perceive our relationship with nature. As environmental concerns grow, Flora's image as a protector of the Earth's bounty has taken on a new, urgent significance. The goddess's role in ensuring the fertility of the land and the blooming of flowers is a reminder of the fragile balance that sustains life. Just as Flora's influence stretched across borders in antiquity, her myth continues to inspire and transform in contemporary times. Whether through the celebration of spring festivals, the invocation of her name in environmental activism, or her embodiment in modern art and literature, Flora remains a timeless symbol of life, beauty, and the interconnectedness of all things. In this way, Flora's mythology, once rooted in the Roman world, has spread across continents and cultures, adapting to new beliefs and circumstances while maintaining its core essence. From ancient Rome to the present day, Flora's reach extends far beyond her origins, proving that the power of nature, beauty, and life knows no boundaries. Her myth has not only survived the passage of time but has flourished, weaving itself into the fabric of cultures and societies all over the world. Flora's story, like the flowers she governs, continues to bloom and evolve across time and space. Her myth is not just a tale of ancient Rome, it is a living, breathing symbol of renewal, hope, and the enduring power of nature. Across cultures and through centuries, Flora's presence can be felt in the gentle rustling of spring winds and the blossoming flowers that dot the earth, and in the quiet moments of reflection that remind us of the cycles of life. The eternal spring she represents is not merely the rebirth of the earth each year, but also the spiritual rejuvenation of humanity. In a world often weighed down by turmoil, Flora's message of renewal offers solace. Her mythology teaches us that, even after the harshest winters, both literal and metaphorical, there is always the promise of new growth. It is a reminder that no matter the struggles we face, the potential for transformation and flourishing is always within reach. Flora, as the goddess of spring and flowers, embodies the very essence of hope, the belief that beauty, life, and growth will always find a way to emerge from the depths of despair. The enduring relevance of Flora is found in her ability to adapt to changing times while retaining her core message. Whether through her association with agriculture, her influence on modern environmentalism, or her continued presence in art, literature, and culture, Flora's spirit remains ever present. She is a goddess whose meaning is as relevant today as it was in ancient Rome, offering a timeless connection to the earth and its cycles. Flora's essence is one of transformation, not just of the land, but of the heart and mind. She reminds us that every season of life holds the potential for rebirth and that, through patience and care, we can cultivate the beauty that lies within ourselves and the world around us. As we honor Flora and her enduring legacy, we are reminded of the simple, yet profound, truths that her mythology imparts, that nature, in all its forms, is a reflection of the divine. That renewal is a constant, cyclical force, and that hope is never far from reach. Her message is a call to reconnect with the earth, to celebrate the beauty and bounty it offers, and to find the courage to embrace the changes that come with each new season of life. Flora, the eternal goddess of spring, continues to be a symbol of growth, renewal, and the endless possibility for transformation.